Looks great, and want to remind anyone who would like to participate in our public input portion of our meeting, they're welcome to do so. Would like you to sign in. There's a sign-in sheet back there on that table if you would like to speak during the public input portion of our meeting. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and then go from there. Please join me. Tonight we're pleased to have Larissa Zitzman with us, a young women's leader in the Lincoln Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Her and her husband have, I think, 4 children in our district, and we appreciate her being here. She will offer the invocation, and she's welcome to stay or you're welcome to leave, Larissa. So, right there. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this opportunity to gather together as members of the community, as teachers, and as leaders of this district. We are grateful for the school district that we have and are grateful for the dedication that teachers and leaders and students and parents have to this community. We are grateful for the caring and the concern that we all have for the welfare of the children of this district, and pray that as this meeting continues, that it will be done with a spirit of wisdom and a spirit without contention, that we may be able to seek guidance and peace as we strive to continue to help this district grow in grace and in strength, and to be able to help good decisions be made so that overall the children and their welfare are number one in our concerns. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Larissa. We'll now call this meeting to order. With the roll call, Paul Jenkins. Present. Greg Calder. Here. Carissa Coates. Here. Randy Smith. Here. And I, Chad Dance, am here. Again, I'd like to welcome the visitors that are here with us tonight. And again, relative to public input, if you have public input, just remind you that due to sensitive nature or complaints about personnel or individual students must be submitted in accordance with Board Policy 4110, Public Complaints and Grievances. The complaint and grievance form 4110F1 is found on the district's home webpage, d93schools.org, under School Board tab, Board Policies. I will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I would so move.
Moved by Paul Jenkins.
I'll second.
Second by Carissa Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The board has had an opportunity to review the consent calendar. If there are any items on the consent calendar that any board member would like to discuss on the agenda, we'd ask you could bring that forward now.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
On the consent calendar, it's item 4D3A, new hire. I'm just really pleased to see that we are hiring 8 flight students. I think that's a really wonderful thing we're doing.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Jenkins. I also wanted to point out that on the consent calendar, we have Thunderbridge High School debate qualifiers to the, I don't know what NSDA stands for, Scott, the tournament. So we have students from Thunderbridge High School attending that national debate tournament in Louisville, Kentucky, and I believe we have students from Hillcrest High School attending that debate tournament as well. And so that's commendable, and we appreciate the work of those students representing our district. Also, I did want to point out as well that from Thunderbridge High School, we have our band from Thunderbridge and Black Canyon that's attending the Utah Symphony. Are they competing, or do we know, Dr. Wilson-Hume, or just attending?
They'll be attending that, but they're also a festival they're going to perform at.
Okay. So I think that's awesome, and appreciate those students representing our district in those capacities. Okay, I'll now entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Moved by Greg Calder.
Second.
Second by Randy Smith. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So we have some recognition we'd like to go through tonight. We have with us tonight the 4A 2022 state basketball champions from Hillcrest High School. So, gentlemen, would you guys like to stand, and we're going to clap for you now, and then we'll hear from your principal and from your coach. Scott Miller and Wendy Johnson. Scott's, of course, the principal, and Wendy's the athletic director there at Hillcrest.
Chairman Dance, school board members, and Dr. Wilson-Hume, thank you very much. And we are thrilled to death to be here. I don't know if the boys are, but they get to be here because of what they accomplished, and so it's pretty special. Before we introduce Coach and the kids, as a district in our continuous improvement plan, we have a promise, and part of that promise, there's a couple tenets that really these students lived up to, and it's believing you can, sharing your talents fearlessly, and persisting through challenges. And these kids did all of those things plus. To watch them persevere through challenges and overcome obstacles and run through the state of Idaho undefeated. The JV program also went undefeated in league play and won the conference tournament. The freshman program went undefeated but lost in the championship game of the conference tournament. So things are really, really good at Hillcrest High School for basketball on the boys' side. Coach Austin has done an amazing job. He has coached at Sand Creek. He's coached at varsity levels at Hillcrest, and he was named the coach, I think, what was it, 7 years ago? 2018, and has worked his tail off with he and his staff, and they've done a great job and built a wonderful program. That being said, I will turn some time over to Coach Wendy Johnson, and she will then introduce the team.
Great. Thanks, Wendy.
Well, I will introduce the coaches to introduce the team since it's theirs, but this is the team won the High Country Conference District Championship, and then also the state championship trophy that I'll have them present. The one that Coach Austin does not know about that I received this week is he's also the Idaho State Coaches Association Coach of the Year.
Awesome.
So I'd like to congratulate him. And I will turn this over to Coach Austin.
Thank you. I'm a little shocked and not sure what to say other than thank you. So our young men are standing back there. It's not all of them. Most of them on our varsity team are standing back there. On the very far left, you can't see him, but it's Cooper Kessler. There he is, poking his head out. Then his brother Kobe Kessler, Jace Austin, Garrett Fippen, Eric Patterson, Talon Taylor, Gavin Hepworth, Isaac Davis, Matthew Trinkle, and Garen Kress. also to the far right is Coach Kofe, Benny Kofe as well. So I would just like to say thank you to all of you, our board members, our superintendent, all of their administration, our administration at Hillcrest, the faculty, the parents. The community support that we had this year was just awesome. Just awesome. And I can't say enough about how much it meant to our young men and to us as a program to have the support and stuff. But most of all, I'd like to say thank you to those young men that are back there and the few that are missing. What an example they are to me, and what an example they are to the community and the people around, and the way they handled themselves, not only this year, but in years past as well. You know, it's taken us a few years to build the program that we've wanted at Hillcrest, but these young men back here are the ones that really have bought into what we were trying to build, and they have exemplified and modeled the behavior that we ask out of our athletes, and I just can't say enough about that group and how happy I am and how pleased I am with them and with everything they've done, both academically and athletically as well. And I love each and every one of them, and I'm so grateful for all the support that we've had this year. So thank you, guys. Thank you very much. And parents and community, thank you so much.
Now, Coach, will you comment on a couple of your ball players who received individual honors?
Yes.
In the state and in the district?
Yeah. So Cooper, poke your head out again there. Cooper won multiple things this year. He was basically the player of the year for this area, 4A, 5A High Country Conference. He doesn't know it yet, but he's also the post-register player of the year. He's getting his picture taken for that tomorrow. That'll come out in Sunday's paper and stuff. So he's won quite a few honors. He ended up going up north into the All-Star game that they pick only seniors for that. He represented in that as well. And then over at the state tournament, he ended up being on first team at the state tournament as well over there. And so lots of good things for Cooper. His brother Kobe was also, Kobe, I forget, was it first team at state? I think it was first team. First team at state. He made that, and then he made the all-conference first team as well, 4A, 5A in this area. Then we have Jace and Garrett, Jace Austin and Garrett Fippen. Both were first team in the 4A in this area. They're honorable mention in some things. Both of them have been recognized for their efforts as well. And then we have Isaac Davis back there, and that ended up being the MVP of the 4A state tournament this year.
Awesome.
And he ended up being the MVP or the player of the year for the state of Idaho as well. And so that's a big honor for him, as well as High Country Conference, first teams, 4A, 5A as well. So lots of good things. Lots of other things that came about as well, some smaller things, but some really good recognition for them.
Okay, we'd like to have you, your assistant coach, and the boys come around, and would like to congratulate those boys. And we do have certificates of recognition that I'll give to you, Coach. Perfect. And then you can give them out to the players.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, come on up, guys.
How many seniors were on your team? 7. Appreciate it so much. Okay, thanks, Coach Austin and Principal Miller and Wendy Johnson. We appreciate that. You're welcome to stay. If the young men would like to sit through a board meeting, see what we do, you're welcome to stay. You're also welcome to leave if you'd like.
That's right.
Okay. I'd like to invite Lyndon Oswald from TCHS to come up and talk about a state champion in his program.
I'm the proud principal of Technical Careers High School. We just got back from state competition, and we have a girl, Eve Swearingen, that is going to go to nationals in Georgia and compete in the welding sculpture. Eve is she's fabulous at a lot of things, but for a female to go into welding and to win top honors in the state of Idaho and be the best is amazing. But she also has a modeling career and all kinds of things. I'm having a hard time keeping her in school because she wants to graduate early and she wants to just get on with life. But I'll have Eve come up and tell you a little bit about her.
Like he said, my name is Eve Swearingen. I am 16 years old, and I was actually asked by my welding teacher to participate in this competition. And I was honestly just a placeholder because he was told that he had to bring a student into the welding competition, so he asked me to do it. I'm incredibly proud of myself for being able to meet and surpass the standards set for me and the expectations, and I think it's really great that I'm able to go on to nationals in Atlanta, Georgia, and see what this career path takes me to.
Great, congratulations. Appreciate it. I'd like you to come up and Eve, come through, and we do have a certificate for you as well. Also this evening we have two presentations from two student councils. We'll invite Bonneville High School Student Council to present to the board this evening. So who do we turn that time over to? Shanna, okay. Shanna Clayton, okay. All right, come on up.
So I'm Emery Dahlke. I'm the student body president of Bonneville High School.
I'm McKenna Cook. I'm the student body vice president of Bonneville High School.
My name is Dawson Belknap, and I'm the student body secretary.
I'm Emily Mickelson. I'm the senior class president. Okay, so we're gonna start off with B Pride Day. So we started off the year with getting our school together to clean up the school to get ready for the school year, of course. We had a lot of teams show up and had our own student council there to help clean up the school.
Our next biggest activity was homecoming week. There's a lot of little committees that go into making this week happen. But we started off by holding a dress-up week. The students all dressed up for different themes each day. The picture shown is Cowboys versus Aliens. We then had our Powder Puff game, which is our girls' football game. Seniors won, so that was awesome. We then had our assembly on Friday, which we had games, we had a class competition, and then we announced our homecoming royalty. After the assembly, we had a parade. All of the different clubs made floats, and then we went around to the surrounding elementary schools and Rocky Mountain, just getting everybody excited for the game. That night, we then had the game. Unfortunately, we didn't win that one, but we had a lot of people show up and had a lot of participation in our student section. That night, student council stayed after the game to decorate the Commons for the dance, and then the next day was the dance. We had a ton of people show up, and we got really good feedback from it.
So I'm going to tell you about a game that we did win, and that was Civil War. So a few weeks before our Civil War Spirit Week, we had a couple people from the community come to us, and they told us that they wanted to sponsor a barbecue for all the students. The day that we planned the barbecue, it ended up being bad weather, so we had to move it inside. But with the help of our cafeteria staff and our principals, we were able to make burgers for, we had nearly the entire student body there. So as student council members, we got all gloved up and masked up and stuff like that, and we were able to serve everyone food, and it was amazingly successful. We had a lot of participation. So during that Civil War week, we have dress-up days every week, just getting us ready for the game. And then Friday night, that was the big game. We ended up winning, first time in 8 years, so that was really exciting.
So after that, we had a garage sale and we had a Spook Alley. So they were going on kind of the same time. So the garage sale was headed by Macy Train, and we just had donations from our students and our student council, and we got it all together to make some money for our student council. And then the Spook Alley, it was a little fun thing that Brexton Law had headed. It was like our own haunted house in Bonneville. We had it during lunch and after school, so students had something fun to do during the week of Halloween to like go and do during the time. And we were able to get closer as a student council with putting up and doing the Spook Alley, and able to make some money for our student council as well.
After October was over, Halloween was over, we start in November for our Adopt a Family fundraising. That's when we pick some families in the community. This year we actually got to choose some that actually go to our school, so that was really cool. We did some fundraising. We did the Penny Wars, which was a class competition. Whoever could get the most pennies and different coins put together for their class in a week. We also did 5-minute fundraisers, which were, we would go right after lunch and ask for any spare change that anybody had. We actually made quite a bit of money from those little fundraisers, so it went really well, and we were able to help those families get some Christmas presents. So.
Speaking of Christmas, our next big activity was Christmas week. So the week of Christmas, one of the activities that we did is we put out a box in the Commons, and it said Christmas wishes to Santa. And then on Friday of the Christmas week, our wonderful principal, Mr. Owen, he's standing in the back there, he dressed up as Santa, and he was able to grant a few of the wishes. But for Christmas week, we just try to make our school lighter and brighter, because for a lot of people, Christmas week is really, really fun, but for some people, it can be kind of a harder time. People that maybe have harder home lives, don't get as many presents, stuff like that. So we decorated all of our wings. We reached out to different clubs. Choir decorated a hallway. We had drama decorate a little section of the school. We had Hope Squad decorate part of the Commons. And it was very successful. The school was decorated. Everyone was positive and having a great time. Yeah, that was our Christmas week.
One of the best things we did this year, in my opinion, was the fundraiser for a student of ours. So we had heard from a student's parent that one of our students had cancer, so we decided to have a fundraiser for them to be able to raise some money so that they'd have a little bit of stress out of their lives. It went really well. We all dressed in purple, and the theme was purple because that's the color of the ribbon that our student had. We raised lots of money with jugs going around the student sections and the parent sections and in the front and the back. We were able to give a lot of support and love to that student, so it was something really cool we were able to do.
One of our things that we look forward to every year is going to our state conference in Boise. This year we got to go and listen to a lot of leadership lessons from schools around the state. One of the big things that they do is give out an award to the student council that exemplifies their motto of the Idaho Student Council Association. and we actually won that award. It's right here, the Learn, Lead, Lift Award. And they told us that we exemplified what they thought a student council should be. So we were really proud of how we represented there at state.
Besides a lot of the big activities we do some ongoing activities. Some of these are Stinger Soda. So every few weeks out of the trimester, we will set up a soda shop in our concession stand. And so people can come up and they can get sodas at lunch. And it's just a little thing to help raise money. Another thing that we do is a midnight movie, and we pair with the Paramount Theater, and we will go in at midnight after their shows are over, and they will keep a few extra workers to stay late, or I guess stay early, and we will start a movie. And we've been able to watch Uncharted. We'll get the newer movies that have just come out, and it's always super successful. We get lots of participation from our student body, and it's always a blast.
So the next thing we did was Mr. Bonneville. So every year we have the Miss Bonneville pageant, and it is an actual pageant that we do at Bonneville, of course. And so this year we decided to have a little bit of fun with our boys and do our very own Mr. Bonneville pageant. We taught them a walk, an on-stage question answer, and had them do talents, so of course it was very interesting to watch. We had a lot of people attend, and we had a lot of boys do Mr. Bonneville. It was really fun to see all the people that came out and see people try new things, and it was a really good experience to see everyone come support those boys, so it was a nice thing to do.
To end off here, we just wanted to say a couple of the upcoming activities that we have. Planned on April 22nd, we have a surprise for the student body. That's how we've been advertising it, and it's kind of funny to see how everyone wants to know what the surprise is. So if you want to know what that is, you'll have to come talk to us later, because we can't tell you yet. We also have our volleyball games coming up. That's our boys volleyball that we do in the spring. The games are this week, and then we have a tournament next week with Thunderbridge and Hillcrest. So that should be really fun to watch. We also have an end-of-the-year barbecue coming up, similar to what we did for Civil War, but it's just an end of the year, celebrating that summer's coming. This time we'll do it outdoors, hopefully, as long as it doesn't rain, and have some games and just, yeah, or snow, and let everyone just kind of hang out. And then, of course, we have prom coming up. Our junior class has been working really hard to get that planned, and we're really excited to see that happen.
Now I get to talk about all the senior class activities. We've been doing a lot. We started out over summer. We planned our senior gear so that our seniors could buy it early in the year. We sold it at registration and a couple of weeks into school, and we had a lot of people buy that, so it's super fun to see them all wearing it at school. Then the next thing we did the day before our first day of school, we had a senior sunrise, and we played some games, we had breakfast, we played music, we watched the sunrise on the bleachers and just had a good time. We had a great turnout at that. It was super fun. Then we have a ton of upcoming activities, but before we get to those, not pictured, we did a 70s disco dance to fundraise for graduation. It was a stag dance, and we had a ton of participation because of that. We had a bunch of underclassmen along with our upperclassmen, and that was super fun and super successful. Then we put together a parent committee, and they're in charge of our all-nighter for after graduation. They've been putting in a lot of work getting prizes and planning games, and that should be super awesome. It's going to be happening at the Apple. And then we have our senior lagoon trip, which will happen right before graduation, actually. We are excited for that. We haven't started selling tickets, but I expect a lot of people to come. Our senior sunset is going to be the last day of school, similar to our senior sunrise, just to end off the year. We're going to watch a movie, we're going to hold out at our stadium, and just have a good time with each other. And then graduation, we're also super excited for. We've got a lot planned. It's just going to be at Bonneville, and it should be really great. We've had a really awesome year at Bonneville, and do you have any questions for us?
Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Jenkins?
What was the best activity?
Personally, I loved going to the 70s disco. Everyone dressed up in their grooviest outfit, and so that was really fun. It was a little more relaxed than some of our regular dances, and the participation with the younger classmen was really fun to see them all show up, so that's what I really liked.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And you're all seniors. What's your plans for next year? Just quickly.
I'll be going to BYU in the
Okay,
fall.
awesome.
I'm going to BYU as well.
Okay.
I'm going to BYU as well.
I actually had my doctor's appointment this morning, and that's the last thing I need to do for my mission
Your
papers.
earliest mission, good, cool.
So, yeah, I'm going on a mission.
All right. So I do want to acknowledge Shanna Clayton, who is the Student Council Advisor. Shanna, do you have any comments, anything you'd like to Great group of kids. You've had a lot of fun. Seems like this class is united and good camaraderie. Anything you'd like to add, or Levi? Levi's here, the principal.
It's been hard to be principal. I used to be over student council. Assistant principal, and so I've had to give that up. But watching them rebound after
COVID,
basically being shut down for COVID, finally having a year that they could do some things, it's been really fun to watch them learn and grow and help build our culture of Bonneville.
Great.
I just want to say, very proud of them, hardworking, good working, and impressive. They represent well.
Great. Thank you very much, you guys. We'll give you a big hand. Also tonight we have student council from the Technical Careers High School. They're here with us this evening, and we'll turn some time to Principal Lyndon Oswald. Whoever you'd like to, okay?
I'm Mark Richardson. I'm a teacher at Technical Careers High School, and I'm the student council advisor, so great opportunity to be able to work with these amazing kids. Technical Careers is a lot different than the other schools. Most of you, I think, have an idea of what we do there, but as you see the presentation, you see that it's based on tech, and we have some kids that are just amazing at the things they do there. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Good evening. We are with Technical Careers High School, and we'd like to thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Emma Storr. I'm the student council president over at Technical Careers High School. This is Caden Hendrian. He is our skills president. And Lena Cabrera, she's with us over here. She's our secretary. And we have Nathan Williams representing our school tonight.
Here at TCHS, we have some goals. They are enable every student access to the tools to graduate, ensure all seniors have one area of certification and college credit by the end of the year, and to create a professional work environment.
This past winter, the Technical Careers High School students joined Habitat for Humanity to help build a house for needy people in the community. It was a great time for us to help out and do some things for the people.
Once again, we did our Penny Wars competition between the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, where all of our money is donated to the children at St. Jude's Hospital. This year, we raised $1,776.44, more than double the amount that we raised last year.
Awesome.
And of course, our seniors won. Here's a copy of the letter that they sent thanking us.
Last Friday, as a part of Random Acts of Kindness Week, the school had an Easter egg hunt for all the students, and we had a great turnout, and we definitely all left it. I definitely should have had.
At Technical Careers High School, students can earn DIRT Awards, which stands for Doing It Right at Tech. And we get these for doing service, helping other students, and excelling in class. With the award, we take it into the office, and we get to spin a prize wheel, and we get to win candy, school swag, tech tools, and outdoor equipment.
Every Friday, the student council pops popcorn that we sell to each of the students, and then we give a bag to each of our teachers just as like an appreciation for each of our students and teachers.
Top Dog is kind of an event we have. It's a week long, and it's an inter-school competition seeking the top dog on campus. We had a variety of games, including ladder toss, horseshoes, a beanbag toss, which was made by our construction class, cornhole, and can jump.
Leading into finals week, the second trimester, teachers read a quote to the students each day and discussed how it applied. On that Friday, each student was given a stress ball with one of these quotes on them. Good things take time. I can do this. Strong, smart, fearless. And dream big.
Tech Wars is a competition between students in their respective fields of choice where they compete for prizes and scholarships. Tech Wars is a good way to test students' skills in a competitive environment. Winners of Tech Wars get to advance to state competitions in Boise. At the state skills competition, Ethan Kramer took third place in auto collision and repair. And Eve Swearingen, who is with us tonight, took first place at state skills in a welding sculpture. She'll be representing our school as well as our state in the national competition in Atlanta, Georgia.
And let's say a little bit about our tech classes.
The EMT program is a rigorous program where learning is done through hands-on activities and scenarios. Students learn everything needed to become an EMT or medical assistant immediately following the course, including skills like heart attack management, oxygen therapy, trauma, and even some medicine. Our medical assisting and EMT classes also earn their basic life support, stop the bleed, and CPR certifications before they're even graduated.
In Ag Tech, we learn to raise and care for animals such as turkey, pigs, chickens, beef calves, and over 200 trout. Next year, we'll be adding dual credit ecology and biology classes.
In construction, we have built several things this year, including 2 desks, one for the EMT room and one for a teacher, 3 large sheds, and they have begun construction on a tiny home. Construction also helped build the home for the home for Habitat for Humanity.
Our engineering classes learn software using both design and AutoCAD. They have also been working with solar energy, 3D printing, and have learned how to go from the basic idea to a solution to the end result using the engineering models they have learned.
Our auto collision program is a 3-year course designed to teach students the necessary skills to be prepared to begin the trade right out of high school. In this class, they work on anything from minor door dings to full paint restorations.
Tech is a 3-year course designed to prepare students to enroll in college courses or be prepared to work in the industry. Automotive provides for opportunities to get 14 credits through ISU for automotive.
This year in welding, we have made snow plows for Black Venom Products, which allowed the students to follow professional drawing and create a professional product. We had some representatives from colleges come to visit with the students, one from ISU who gave a small demonstration on how to run a 6010 route, and one from the Universal Technical Institute. And welding also made these metal tattered American flags with the Pledge of Allegiance on them, and those are pretty big, and those are really cool. We have one in the Shelley Fire Department too.
That they bought from us.
Yep. I believe Eve made that one too. At the Technical Careers High School, we learn our trades by going to the tech classes and doing it. We don't learn by staying in bed, missing class, or by doing online work. We learn our craft and prepare for future careers once we leave school by getting our hands and our pants and shirts dirty. We learn how to weld by welding, to fix a car, smooth a fender, or build a house by doing it. And we love what we do.
At Technical Careers High School, students focus on expanding and developing their skills to prepare for their future careers.
We try to be an example of STEM-based learning for ourselves in our school district.
We strive to support our community through various acts of service through the skills we learn and do at the school.
We encourage our students to develop, grow, and continue to learn. We'd now be willing to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. So tell us a little bit about that tiny home. Where's it going to go, and what's the situation on that?
I'm construction representative.
Okay.
So we're just building a tiny home. When we were doing our Tech Wars, we got donated some tools and supplies and some cash to get what we needed. And we're just in the beginning basis, and we're learning all the skills we need to build an actual home which we are doing. But yeah, so.
So is it going to be sold, Linden, placed somewhere, or what?
It's going to be in the parade of homes.
Oh, it's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah, that's cool.
And then we are going to tour it through the elementaries, let kids
yeah.
actually go into it and see all the custom furniture and how it's built.
Great.
Fun.
Super, thank you very much. Questions from the board or comments from board members?
I have one. How can we have, what, close to 8,000 high school students in our district? 4,000. And there's only 112 of you enrolled and maybe up to 300 take a few classes. Only 35% of your fellow students go to college. We leave in a big gap in between. How do we recruit more to join your program? What do they say they don't feel like they have, or why they don't want to come?
Could we ask for some clarification? Do you want to know why our students don't, or why other
No, how
students?
can we get in our district maybe up to close to 1,000 students?
At our school?
In
Yeah,
your
to
school?
recruit more students, how do we do that?
Is it socially, they don't want to come because they want to stay with friends? What do you hear so we can help understand that?
We've outgrown our property.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
We don't even have enough parking places for our big ones, so we've got to expand, and we're hoping to do that possibly in the future with some movement of some other properties. But we're as full as we can be in where we're at.
And I also think that the stigma of our school is like we're just a bunch of hotheads who don't work at all. But we are career-based. We are learning how to be in a career, and so we're not just sitting in a classroom. We do learn classroom things, but those classroom things are to help us do better in our careers. And so it's stigma, and we're a small school, and just a lot of things. Just
I think it's great, and I think one other thing as you seniors leave is I'm sure Principal Oswald would love to expand different areas, and if you have ideas, you know, like maybe heating, cooling, plumbing, whatever, I've always wanted to see like a beautician school inside the school, and that might work, but leave those kind of ideas, because you guys are living it, and you can help us to help the next group.
I feel like if more students knew about our programs that we do, then more students would be more open to going to our school. I know that I meet other seniors from other schools who find out that I'm in the medical assisting program over at Technical Careers High School, and they go, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known about that. I would have joined it. And it's just crazy because there's only 6 kids in my class. Then I'm the only one from Technical Careers High School. 4 of them are from Thunderbridge, and 1 of them is from Bonneville. So it's just, I think, getting it out there that we have all these different programs at our school.
Do you think it'd help if you went and did this program at each of the 3 high schools?
It might, yeah.
The traditional high schools, sorry.
For sure.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions or comments from board?
I have one really fast question. What is a ladder toss?
So it's like 2 golf balls connected through a string, and you throw it at these different levels of rungs, and you get certain points for whatever level you reach.
Thank you.
That took us some time too, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Great.
What you're picturing sounds fun too.
Yeah, so if each of you would tell us what your plans are after you graduate.
I might as well go first. I actually got my wisdom teeth out yesterday, and I will be...
And you're here tonight, awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky. But I should be starting my mission paper soon. I should be hopefully on a mission next year.
Okay.
I have my own Etsy business, and I'm going to continue working with that and take some college courses on business and for electronics.
Great, great.
I don't know for sure. I'm definitely planning on going into the work environment and then mission in a year. So.
Okay.
I'm getting a job as a certified medical assistant out of high school down in Pocatello.
I'm taking the EMT class right now. I planned on being welding, and I had the opportunity to do that over the summer. Decided that's not what I wanted to do, so then I switched over to the EMT class, and I'm enjoying that. I'm looking into possible careers in the military.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So impressed with all of you. Awesome. Congratulations. Appreciate you coming tonight. Lyndon, great job. Mark, thanks so much. And any other comments from you two gentlemen?
I just say that flag that you saw up there, it doesn't give it credit.
Does not give it justice. It's awesome. You should
I
see it.
had this young lady here who they had to do it for. I said, I want one for my office at home. And so they made it about the third the size, and they're just gorgeous. These kids, that's kind of the work that they do. It's a lot of fun working with them.
We work very hard.
Great. Dr. Wilson-Hume, you know, Randy's comment about maybe having some of the leadership from this high school make a presentation to our underclassmen at the other high schools might generate some interest, maybe with you and Lyndon working on that. That would be an awesome approach. Generate some more interest. Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, use that tonight. Give him 2 or 3
Great. You students are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or you're welcome to leave if you'd like to. Thank you very much. It's amazing when we see the quality of young people we have in our schools. They're doing just so awesome. Very impressive. We're now to our public input portion of our meeting. I will read the policy relating to public input. Pursuant to board policy number 4105, public participation in board meetings, public input shall be held to a maximum of 1 hour and will provide an opportunity for any board member, administrator, staff member, student, or patron to raise issues of interest. The board will receive such input without comment except to ask germane questions of those speaking. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. The board will take no action relative to any items during the meeting unless on the agenda, but may direct the superintendent to consider such items at subsequent meetings. We do have some individuals who have signed up, and we'll just go down in order that they're signed up. We have Alicia Birch. Alicia, I did that last time.
You're closer this time.
Go ahead, Alicia.
And do I need my address again? Right.
It's
Oh,
down on
you know
here,
what?
but I
Okay.
understand now we don't, it's not required to give your address.
Awesome. So I'm Alicia Birch. I just wanted to kind of recap what I had said last time about the ERR programs. We all understand the issue with space in our district. Unfortunately, we are growing really fast. Well, it's a good thing, but also not so good because we don't have buildings. But you know, Summit was made for the medical kids, and it has been so crucial for kids who really wouldn't be able to go to school if they didn't have those medical resources available and a space to provide those resources. We would have a lot more kids homebound in our district if it wasn't for these services being provided. They're not necessarily, yes, we could provide them in a closet, in a bathroom, something like that, but you don't want to eat in a closet or a bathroom, and neither does my child. That is not something, you know, we would like. the way Summit Hills was before Mountain Valley's resource or ERR class was brought over, there was the one ERR classroom that was kept in the resource room. And kids from the district would come in the class with my daughter, and it wasn't a huge class, I think there was 8 to 10, but they were all medically fragile kids that needed those resources from that school and the additional nurses there. There's lots of RNs, LPNs there on staff for anything that happens. I mean, seizures, allergic reactions, you know, anything these kids have going on. When the Mountain Valley kids were brought over, it did take up a lot more space because they have a lot more kids that just need the education portion of resource room, not necessarily the medical portion that Summit Hills can offer these kids. It is scary to think about moving kids to 3 different schools with the shortage of nurses and paras, CNAs that all these kids have. Most of them have a one-on-one with them for safety concerns. Right now, when our nurse is out, there is someone there in the DRR room whose kid didn't come that can step in and help my child. Otherwise, I would have to go to school with her, which I cannot as a single parent who works full-time, or she has to come home. It's not fair to her to miss out on school because her nurse couldn't come in that day and we can't get the position filled with the shortages that are going on. And that is just punishing her for things she has no control over. With the way the high schools and middle schools in our district are modeled, they have the medical resources, they have the DRR, and they have the ERR. Those are great models to follow because a lot of these kids are going to move up and down in and out of those 3 rungs their whole educational career. Why not keep it for those kids at a young age so they know what to expect as they get older and these changes happen? Consistency is so important for these kids to be successful in life, and that's our goal, is that our kids in these classrooms, you know, they may not go to college, they may not graduate, but we're trying to make them as successful and independent as possible, which is a great thing that the resource or ERR rooms do provide for our kids. And it helps them learn to advocate for themselves, which is so important because so many times people, kids, adults with disabilities are overlooked because nobody believes they can advocate for themselves and make choices. This teaches them at a young age to be able to do that, which is crucial for them throughout their lives. You know, the comment was brought up last time that services can be provided at any school. Well, then why don't we provide them at all schools and keep our kids at their home schools so that the neighbor kids they play with, they go to school with, they get to go to school with, they get to see them. My daughter doesn't know kids in our neighborhood because she doesn't go to school with them. If we can provide it anywhere, why was that not being done rather than grouping them in 3? I mean, just these are the things that have come to my mind since I talked with you guys last time. You know, I know changes have to be made. There's nothing we can do about that. Change has to be made, but we just hope that all options have been exhausted and discussed and thought about. You know, maybe going back to the model it was before Mountain Valley came over and keeping the medically fragile kids there until we have a school that can accommodate more. There's not a very high amount of medically fragile kids in the elementary schools, it seems like, that utilize the medical portion specifically. You know, they take 1 room. So on one of the slides you had last time, it said the reason, you know, to have these changes and these boundaries is to sustain the peer groups, which is so important. It is hard for these kids to make friends. It is hard for them to have their peers accept them. My daughter's been at the school since kindergarten. Her gen ed peers accept her and help her. She does go in their class half the day and they help her with assignments, getting lunch, going to recess. They know her and what she needs help with, and that's amazing for her to have that support from a peer and not an adult. So to change that social dynamic for so many of these kids at such a crucial time in their social development, I think would be devastating to them, and that unfortunately can follow them for a very long time. And that's all I have.
And then Bailey, that's your daughter?
Yes, she wanted to talk.
She wanted to say,
She
okay.
wrote, yep, she wrote a little speech she wanted
Awesome.
to tell you guys.
Okay,
Tell me
go
your
ahead,
name.
Bailey.
You don't have to say that part.
Okay,
What's
my
your-
name's Bailey
Bailey what?
Birch.
Good job.
I don't want to switch schools because I like my school. I don't want to lose my friend. I don't want to leave my Jenna friends. It's hard to make new friends, and still it's hard to learn a new school. Change is hard for me to adjust to. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bailey. Okay, we have on the list Kelsey and Bronson Hunt.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Hunt. This is my husband.
Bronson, great, thank you.
Our daughter also goes to Summit Hills. We've only been there for 3 years. We've moved all around Idaho Falls to find schools for her. We've been in District 91. We've driven out to Shelley for special programs for her. And one of our friends had told us about Summit Hills, and we moved to this district just for this school. This is the first school that she's actually gotten her medical needs met. And so she has a really rare syndrome similar to dwarfism, and heart problems and lung problems, bone problems, blood problems, just all of it. And this is the first school that those needs have been met, and she's been safe. She's had some pretty scary injuries at other schools. And having those needs met, she's been meeting goals for the first time that she's had for 5 years. And Bailey was her first friend, and she, like they said, just having those peers, I think that's been the biggest change for her. They've motivated her. They became a little family. She loves going to school, and she's also very upset. She can just tell that there's changes going on. And I'd just like you guys to consider that, just to keep these peers together. I volunteered a lot, and I have never seen a group of kids like these guys. She's in her 3rd grade, and if we were to change it, it would take a long time for her to meet those goals again. And I don't know if she's going to have peers.
It's taken 3 years for her to get to this point, so, I mean, who knows if she moves to another school, if it'll take another 3 years to get back to where she is now. She loves that school. That school loves her. Everybody knows who she is, and she hugs everybody, and loves everybody. That school's just been so good to her, and it's been good to us, realizing that we're not stressing throughout the day on if she's okay, is she going to get hurt, are we going to get that phone call saying, hey, you got to run to the hospital, or some of these things that Summit Hills has for her when these things happen. It's been a weight on our shoulders being in this school. It's been awesome for us and for her. So.
And Summit Hills has made special accommodations for her. They've installed small toilets for her so she can independently be successful at that. And those toilets have blessed other students that are small, and they put in bars for her to help her get into classrooms that she goes in a lot. And they've made a lot of special changes for her to be successful.
And those kids love each other. they go in and they hug each other. And they, just like with Bailey, they all help each other out. It's just one big family in there. And, I think kind of tearing them apart and putting them in different schools is really gonna mess things up for these kids. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's good. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Wilson.
Have you met Dr. Gerber?
No, we have not.
Okay, we have Holly. Will you say your last name, Holly? I'm sorry.
My name is Holly Giulio.
Giulio, okay.
And although my children have grown up and graduated from both Hillcrest and Bonneville High School, how does that happen? Because one of them is in special ed. So my son, wow, it's been kind of an adventure for us. We moved here 12 years ago, and we moved here, since we've lived here, I think we've been through, this is our 5th special education director. When we first moved here, nobody was ready for the amount of kids that were going to be getting diagnosed with autism, and nobody was prepared. I mean, nobody, you guys, or whoever was in your position at the time, they really weren't ready for what was happening. I've had meetings with pretty much everybody in this room about special education. I also work as a special ed advocate across eastern Idaho in most of the school districts. Some love me, some don't, and that's fine. And yes, I can be difficult, but not usually. I think my biggest concern is it feels like we're going backwards. My son started at Discovery when we called that the autism room, the autism program. Contrary to popular belief, those classrooms were ERR and DRR classrooms with a focus on autism, language, and behaviors. So while we're saying that we have only had in the last 3 years those 3 classes in one school, in elementary school, I'm going to disagree with that because my kid was part of those classes. When my kid and 5 others were getting ready to move to middle school, we didn't have a program that fit them. And what happened, Jason? We started an ERR class that went with them, and that meant there was a DRR and an ERR class both in Rocky Mountain Middle School. We now call those programs, I think we've started in the last 3 years calling them the Discovery Program, and now I think we call them the Spectrum. Make no doubt about it, those are ERR classes. You can call them what you want. They still function in the same way, even though you're calling them something different. So the gold standard for all of us parents, and I'm speaking on behalf of the parents in our parent group, probably, for the majority of them, is why can't we have more programs like that in multiple schools? We understand that the reason, and one of the questions Alicia asked was why we don't have programs in every class, in every school, because we can't afford to, right? We can't have, and we wouldn't want to do that, because why would we want to have one child in an ERR class if there weren't multiple children? That's why we started grouping those kids together to begin with. So yes, it'd be great if we all went to our home schools. My son's never gone to a home school. Not in his entire school life did he go to his home school. And we've lived in 3 different states, so it's not like it's just us. That's the way it works. If special education was easy, we wouldn't have a whole set of documents and legalese to make sure that everybody does their job. It is complicated. It is not as easy as just picking up a classroom and moving it to another school. No matter what decision you make, you are going to hurt some children, some more than others. I'm going to give you an example. If Bailey doesn't have an ERR class, and she has to move classes to a whole other school, that's one thing. But let's say, okay, we're going to move the ERR class, but individually, we're going to make the decision to leave Bailey and maybe the Hunt's child at Discovery. and not Discovery, at Summit. But we're going to put them in one of the classes that already exist. That's not really right, because one class is higher functioning. The other class is lower functioning. We all hate that term, but it is what it is. My son has autism and Down syndrome. He is nonverbal. He bangs his head. He has behaviors. Yes, he can read. Yes, he can write, but he does not learn at the same level. You wouldn't put Bailey in that classroom because that's not fair to her. Just like we don't put a beginner math kid who's just getting the basics of math in pre-algebra or geometry. It's the same thing. So the team of her IEP has determined that she needs to be in an ERR class. You can't decide later, well, we don't have that program anymore, so let's put her in one of the program classes that are there. It doesn't work that way. So it's not easy. None of the decisions are easy. Every time special ed comes up, it's complicated. Greg, you know the last time this all happened, you went and saw the schools, you tried to learn. You're a lawyer. You know how complicated it is. And so to move our children is really hard. I sometimes think we've put more thought into Thunderbridge High School and what it was going to do to the kids on the football team than we have put into moving these children. And so while it doesn't affect my kid, I have been part of the change that has happened in our district. We have the best district for special ed. There's a reason people move here, and it's partly because of the program that we've put in place. And yes, we're overcrowded. We're overcrowded because we're darn good at it. Y'all are darn good at it. Our teachers are great. People want to be here. And unfortunately, that means we have an abundance of kids who are getting special ed, and that is only going to grow. So personally, I would love to see at least one ERR class stay at Summit, along with the DRR class, and of course, the resource room. Because all schools have resource rooms, because those schools are for, those are really for gen ed kids. So we're really talking about ERR and DRR. It would be nice if at least one of the ERR classes stayed at Summit, and then also maybe put one at Bridgewater. Why would we not move those 3 ERR classes and maybe a DRR class to eliminate some of the stress of that school and make 3 schools that have all 3 options, and maybe only have 2 schools that have full-time real nursing care? Because like Dr. Thurber said, some kids need nursing care, but they could use a CNA instead of a full-on nurse. So there is a difference in nursing care. And so, yes, we can have CNAs at every school, but I'm pretty sure nobody wants to pay to have nurses at every school, right? Because that would be really expensive. So I would really just want you guys to think about what we're trying to do, and I wish that we had more of an opportunity to really have more dialogue, I guess, where we can actually talk about the individuality of what happens when you move a class, because it is very specific to a child and to the individual that's accessing it. Those classes change based on the dynamics of the kids in the classroom. And all ERR classes are not the same. All DRR classes are not the same. It depends on the kids and the level that the kids are at that are in the classes currently. So that makes it a big difference as well. So that's on that. Second thing, I was part of the bullying committee for the policy that you guys are going to get ready to vote on. And it was a big problem for my daughter when she was in school. So I really, really, really want to thank you guys. And I think it's like a huge step forward that we're having some accountability and some consistency. And I know we've already seen like a huge change, and we've already seen it affect certain kids. And so I really appreciate the fact that you guys, because I know you're all going to vote yes today. But so I just wanted to thank you for that. And I wanted to thank Scott and you guys too for letting us be a part of it, because I think it was awesome. It was a quick turnaround in a policy that's pretty complicated. And that's kind of the same thing that would have been nice to have when it came to the special education classrooms being moved, because that committee and having that cuts down on all of these people coming and telling you their whole stories, because those questions could have been addressed in a different way. So that's all.
Thank you, Holly. Appreciate that. Any comments or questions from board members on?
Can I ask
Yes.
a clarifying question to Alicia? So okay, so your daughter has been at the school for a while before they split the Mountain Valley program.
Yes.
How has it changed since they moved the ERR from Mountain Valley for her? So she was in a resource room that was acting like an ERR classroom.
Yes.
But when they actually moved an official ERR classroom, how did it change?
So the biggest change was she had a hard time because the class actually changed. She's in 5th grade now, but that had been the same class she'd had since kindergarten. So still to this day, she goes in the resource room because she thinks that's her class, and they have to go get her and say, nope, we moved over here.
So you're saying that the physical
the physical classroom changed, and she has still a hard time, and it's been 3 years. Honestly, they did such an amazing job in that resource room with those kids, making it a mini ERR is what they would call it. Her class now is a little bigger than it was then. Now they split up kindergarten to 3rd in one, and then 4th to 6th in the other. So some of her friends were put in the other classrooms, but they're right next to each other. I guess that would be the biggest change I've seen, because they're following the same curriculum, the same small groups. I don't know, have you noticed anything else? Her daughter was also in the mini ERR class. So really, it was just the size of the classroom changed. The kids coming in and out, I guess, is a little more now because she's in a 4th to 6th grade split. And so all those 6th graders keep leaving, and she doesn't understand that, where before it was more kids her own age, I guess, not necessarily the older children were in there at that time. Could have just been we didn't have kids that needed that resource then.
So did her teacher change?
Yes. Luckily, her teacher was a student teacher in her mini ERR, and then became a full-time teacher at the district, so she did know her. It was an adjustment, but that did help because she did know that teacher prior.
Thank you.
No academic changes.
Thanks.
So, Dr. Wilson-Hume, how many ERR children are at Summit Hills? I see we have Colby here, principal of Summit Hills. I don't know if it's, Scott, if you can guide me a little bit, would it be appropriate to ask him to comment?
On the number?
On the number, he hasn't signed up to speak.
About 38 by my count.
38. Okay. Any other questions from board members?
I have a couple for both of you, if I may, is both parents,
Mrs. Hunt and Mrs. Birch.
Do you know, under what's been suggested, the classroom will change? Will the personnel, the fellow students change, and the teacher?
Yes.
All will change.
So from my understanding, most of the parents I've talked to at Summit Hills, most of us are going to be between Bridgewater and Cloverdale. So they're going to divide the teachers, the paras, that were with those kids, so they will be changing as well.
Will half of the students remain the same then? There will be some familiarity or not?
I don't know if it's half.
From what you understand.
My daughter would be going to Cloverdale, and our daughters are in different ERR classes, and my
none of the kids there, Summit Hill's not their home school. So
Right.
with the boundaries, we come from all over.
Do you have any confidence that the medical needs, from what you've been told, for your respective children will be met?
Personally, I haven't been told what any of the medical changes would be. I do have concerns with the Cloverdale building itself. At Bridgewater, I'd have less concerns because the schools are similar. And, but yeah, we haven't been told.
Nothing, we just got a letter saying your child will go to this school. It didn't say anything about their accommodations or changes that will be made at those schools. I know last time we did discuss, this microphone don't like me, that there would be modifications to the building, but honestly, we're pretty skeptical to make such major modifications for kids who have not only the medical issues, both our doctors have a hard time navigating uneven terrain, you know, opening doors. The bathroom situation's a huge one for most of the kids in both classes. I am very concerned about my daughter's safety if she is to switch schools. I do know, I was a substitute for many years in this district, so I have been to most of the schools here several times. Bailey has been to both Cloverdale and Bridgewater. Bridgewater's, you know, a newer, nicer school. It's more, I guess, ADA compliant. Would be easier if she took her wheelchair to school to navigate rather than Cloverdale. So I honestly am very concerned about what that will look like for her at either of the schools they are proposing. Right now she goes to the medical kitchen. If you've been to Summit Hills, they have a special needs kitchen in the very middle of the building. It is kept cooler, which is crucial for my daughter because she cannot regulate body temperature at all. She has heat stroke, she gets frostbite, and she has no idea this is happening. So when she gets too warm, especially beginning of school year, end of school year, she has a hard time. They take her in there, she can cool off. The other schools don't have that. Plus getting her feeding tube hooked up. She doesn't want to take her shirt off in front of the whole school. Nobody does. To go in, have a place where they have all her medical supplies right there. They have nurses. If something happens, there is a backup nurse right there at all times if there was an emergency. Get her medical stuff taken care of. She goes back to class. When it's done, she comes back to this medical kitchen. It's nice because it's in the middle of school, so as she does rotate through the classrooms, kindergarten, first, second, they kind of follow the hallway. It's always centralized, so she's not walking across an entire school for it. That has been really convenient for her because she does get tired really fast and easy, and to walk the whole school 4 times a day would be tiresome to her. I mean, we just haven't been shown any ideas of what it would look like when it changes.
You know, I think...
I'm not touching anything. Oh!
I think I can speak for everyone that's involved, these gentlemen and some, in that Carissa is somewhat familiar with the challenges that you face.
Yes.
The rest of us, I think, have great empathy for a 24/7, 356 days a year responsibility and how overwhelming that is. And I don't know if anyone has said they don't want to try to do all they can to accommodate, but the changes are challenging.
Yes.
I know they've done so many renditions, and if you've worked with people and told them, and you want to be more involved on what is going to be set up in those schools to make sure those needs are met, I don't think that's anybody here is opposed to having you where they can. But there's a limited amount of resources, just as there are in your home.
Yeah.
There are here.
Yeah, you know, and money-wise, how much is it going to cost to convert Cloverdale or Bridgewater to become more accommodating for these kids with medical issues? Whereas, you know, like I suggested, if you keep the medical kids there, that money can be allocated to other areas that our district needs. Because, I mean, there's a lot of things need to be done. And the time crunch to have that done by the beginning of school next year, that's a lot of work to get done. My daughter has gone to 4 other schools in this district. Every single one she has been severely harmed at. Whether it was playground, the school itself, you know. Some of the older schools are just that way. They're fine for gen ed kids. They don't have a problem with that. But kids with vision or hearing issue or balance issues, the little things are huge to them. And that's concerning, you know. I mean, I'm not saying Cloverdale or Bridgewater are bad schools at all. Just, it's nice that Summit Hills was made with our kids in mind and have those resources built into the actual building. So it is nice, and I think it's convenient for the staff there.
No, our children are very similar with their needs. And like with the temperatures and not being able to regulate body temperature, same things. My daughter's had heat stroke. She's turned lethargic many times in the year, and they came up with a quick preventative plan for her this year. She hasn't had it this year. Her teacher, since COVID, has also kept that room very clean, and she hasn't been as sick, and she's been able to go a lot more this year. Usually every winter she was home for the whole winter. It's just the staff at Summit Hills, all of them, the front desk, they love those kids. They do so much for them. And like since we've gone to a lot of schools, we know when they're at a good place. Yeah. And like our special love it. They love being there.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Appreciate your comments. Dr. Wilson, you have any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think just a couple things I think are worth clarifying. So one, when Heath presents the boundary changes tonight, what we're presenting is a plan, as you know, to expand the ERRs so that we have a geographical designation for the ERR programs, which we really haven't had in the district previously. And as Ms. Julio pointed out, as our special education population continues to grow, it's necessitated that we need to determine where are these kids going to go to school, because they outgrew a single location and now they've outgrown 2 locations. So that's all the board is approving, is that general geographic designation for the ERR programs. But what overrides all of that is a student's individual education plan and their least restrictive environment. And so in these situations that these good parents have talked about, if their least restrictive environment is going to be at somewhere like Summit Hills, where we're better able to meet those students' needs, there's nothing that's preventing us from allowing those students or saying that that's where the students should remain in school. So as much as we're if the board approves this, there's nothing that changes where the student's least restrictive environment would be, and those would be conversations that would happen in IEP team meetings. So I think that's probably the most important thing. I would just also speak to, I was principal at Cloverdale. We had the ERR kindergarten when I was principal there. We had a child who was blind at that school. We had teachers with some pretty significant disabilities at that school. There's ADA compliance is not an issue at Cloverdale. We've had lots of people with lots of significant disabilities there over the years, and that just hasn't been an issue. Now, that's not to say that there aren't things we need to do differently to move the programs there, but when it comes to these really special medical situations that the parents have talked about, again, we will look at what their least restrictive environment is, and that's where the students will be placed. So to their point, the fact that we had a mini ERR there before doesn't mean we can't continue to have a mini ERR at this school. So,
okay.
Does that help? So
yeah, that helps
right.
me.
So really, just for clarity, what we did is we have a spreadsheet that has this child's general program designation, and we just informed parents so they knew that this could be a change if this is approved. But that's not to say that that's absolutely what will happen, and if these concerns are expressed, then we can have those IEP team meetings to determine where their LRE is.
But it seems like the concern is the ERR program is being moved from Summit Hills. So the only thing that would be available at Summit Hills would be the resource room and the DRR.
Unless like we did before we ever moved the programs there from Mountain Valley, if we had a mini ERR there before that met the needs of these students the best, there's nothing that's keeping us from continuing that there.
So that's what I want to know, is if the needs of these particular students can continue to be met as well as, or even at, Summit Hills.
So I'd say the board's decision tonight, I don't think will impact that. So
Okay.
if there are students there that warrant that need, then that's absolutely what we would do to keep those kids there, just like we did before. So kids that have always been at Summit Hills, which I think is what Alicia talked about with her child, those were not the students that we were intending to move to a different location. Does that make sense? Because while we never called that the medically fragile school, typically students who had severe medical needs, that's the school that they were sent to, because that's where we could best meet their needs. Does that help? Regardless of whether they were designated as ERR or DRR, if there were students with significant medical needs, they were typically sent to Summit Hills.
Okay.
So, can I ask one question for Scott? So, does the term mini ERR make a difference to just a regular, or just an additional ERR classroom? Does that make sense? That was just a question. I think that, from the feedback that I've heard, the biggest thing is it's the elimination of a program, which I don't feel like that was the intention of the proposal, but that has kind of been the interpretation of the proposal.
Yeah, and I think what we have to look at is the students with severe medical needs. Right. Where is the safest and best place for those students to receive their education? And so, and regardless of whether they're labeled on our spreadsheet as ERR or DRR or another designation, if that school is the best place to serve their needs, then there's nothing that would keep us from keeping those kids there.
Thank you.
So my point is, if we did it before, in my mind, nothing in this proposal tonight should change what we did prior to moving the students from Mountain Valley to Summit Hills. That was our primary focus group as we were looking at these changes. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I would bring up, when I was at Rocky Mountain, we did have what was considered an ERR and a DRR there. But one of the things that started happening from when I was an assistant, went to an elementary school, came back, we started seeing different needs from different students. So really what we did at Rocky Mountain at that time, and I feel like that's what we're trying to do here somewhat, is what we, instead of saying you're a specific DRR student, you're a specific ER, you're autism, you're all these different things, we said, I mean, really what we're trying to do is reach the student where they're at. And so what we had said at that time is we said, listen, we're going to have 4 levels, and we're going to have 4 levels of where students should go. And it was going to be based on, it wasn't necessarily, well, you're ER, so you have to go there. And they're saying, well, wait a minute, but my needs can't be met there. I want to go somewhere else. And so we started just saying, you know, it's just different levels. And then depending on what you need, some of your time may be here, some might be there, just depending. And so I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do, is really trying to figure out how to serve the students, but also help Summit Hills, who was just overwhelmed with the number of students.
Okay, so I think we completed our public input portion of our meeting, and I will just remind the board we will have an opportunity for more comments and more questions from the board when this is presented. So let's move on to invite Dr. Wilson-Hume to introduce, well, let's see, school public relations report, I guess.
Yeah.
Scott, would be your turn to time to you now.
Yep. So this is a combined report between Phil as our Director of Communications and myself. Because Phil's manning the camera, he prepared a video for us. That should be a surprise to everybody. So.
Well, it's been an incredible journey, and our door is always open if you want to learn more about our communication strategy. I'm going to keep things short by focusing most of this report on how we communicated during the pandemic. March 13th, 2020, that's when President Trump declared a national emergency. We went live that morning at 11:30.
And we're continuing to monitor the situation very closely, because every day the situation is changing and we're getting new updates and new information from different organizations.
We had a live update later that afternoon, and then things really got interesting on Sunday, March 15th. We live streamed the emergency meeting of the Board of Trustees, and then provided a live update that afternoon for our community. Those 2 videos were viewed more than 30,000 times. Our engagement that week on social media was leading the nation. We were telling our own story and connecting with our community. We went live a few dozen more times after that, including once in D91's boundaries to help spread the word on grab-and-go lunches that were happening there. We had many videos showing families where they could get these lunches. Knowing that our community was well informed of the services being provided to them from the district, we shifted our focus to highlighting those who were giving back. We ended the school year by helping our high schools with graduations. The new school year brought new opportunities. Limited capacity and social distancing measures meant we were the eyes and ears for a lot of parents and spectators who couldn't make it to the games. We continued our weekly parent newsletter. Our weekly newscast celebrated its 200th episode, and we found a sponsor for our monthly D93 live segment with Superintendent Wolstenhume. Our great sponsors stuck with us throughout the pandemic, and we continue to bring thousands of dollars in each year thanks to their loyalty. We know that a good communications plan incorporates the use of earned media, and we are very grateful for our earned media partners.
D93 has been so responsive to East Idaho News whenever we got a question, whether it's a serious matter of something happening right now that we need urgent information, or whether it's something that we might do for our Feel Good Friday segment. A lot of these are kind of put together at the last minute, so we're able to reach out to Phil and find out, if we can get into a school, if we can go in and surprise a teacher, if we can get that information that we need, and we get a response pretty quickly, and that allows us to go about our job rather than waiting and waiting and waiting as might happen in other places.
The communications team is one of the best that I've worked with in any district because you can contact them at any time and they will get you in touch with the right person, and it eliminates a lot of the time that we don't have to track down people to try to find who the right person to talk to is.
We are starting to get back into the schools more now that things are returning to normal. Building community is always at the heart of what we do, and I'm proud of the fact that we maintain that throughout the pandemic.
I have been in, let's see, this is my 3rd, 4th district that I've worked in. And the communications for our district is above all of the rest. Like I feel like our communications team does an amazing job making sure that our public knows what is happening, especially in times of celebration, and also building that trust so that when we do have times of crisis, they are trusted and they're looked to be giving the right information, and I'm so impressed with our communications team.
Phil and Sam have been great. They've come and recorded our events for us, for advanced opportunities, for graduation here at Bonneville Online High School. They're great to support us in getting information out to the local media and posting information on Facebook for our families to understand, and they have a better following on Facebook and Instagram than we do with our own Facebook page, so it's a great opportunity for us to get information out, and they're awesome.
I'm Shane Wilker, and I have the Shannon Wilker Foundation. It's a foundation I created for my wife that passed away from breast cancer, and what the foundation does is all the money the foundation raises goes directly to local cancer patients and their families to help them with medical expenses. I have been really fortunate to work with District 93 and the schools in 93, and they have been so supportive of the foundation.
Phil's been here for a long time. I always recognize him as we go throughout the district and all the, and Sam comes usually sometimes too, so we've seen her before too, and we just love watching. It keeps me updated on what's going on in the district. I just appreciate having some communication to the parents, all the board meetings online. I think it's really great. It's been fun.
We won some pretty big awards for our work during this time, and I was encouraged to join the executive board of the National School Public Relations Association. I oversee the northwest region of the country and most of Western Canada. We continue to look for innovative ways to improve our communications, including the recent launch of our new podcast. The numerous awards and independent communications audits are a good indicator that we are on to something good here in D93, and none of this would be possible without the support of the Board of Trustees. bad after graduation, I'm going to find a cabana or a kayak or something and just relax, because that's a crazy week for us, the graduations.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions?
So just a couple of things.
The presentation.
Yeah, the actual. So in addition to that, Phil alluded in the video about our the weekly updates that we started sending during the pandemic, and we've continued that for the past 2 years. This is our weekly reach with that, so you can see we're averaging about 2,000 clicks on our weekly updates, and those times that things got kind of crazy and critical, our mask mandates back in September, the spike in COVID and our school closures in January, we definitely saw a spike in those. But the fact we've got 2,000 out of roughly 7,000, 8,000 families in the district that are clicking on those has been great. And similar numbers with our Facebook Live views that Sam and Phil do each week. You can see we're sitting right around 2,000 to 2,500 typically on a weekly view for Facebook Live. And then a little bit lower on D93 news, but still really good reach with that. So, Phil, anything you want to add?
That huge spike is when Carissa did episode 200 for us.
You're welcome.
No, I saw this quote on Twitter. Strong relationships are based on the trust and communication, but if there is no communication, there can be no trust. And we pride ourselves on that. And here's our grades from our parents, and seems like we're doing something right. Coincidentally, and I'm really bad at math, and Sam's probably like, no, don't do it. I think the 4s and the 5s equal 93. So, as in D93. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. Big one.
I wanted to ask one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how many separate homes we have in our district. I'm sure somebody does. But I assume at least a third don't have any students.
Yeah.
We seem to have a challenge getting particularly financial information, accurate financial information, to all the taxpayers in our district. Do you have any suggestions? That, and some of those clicks could be the same family getting on. It's not separate families, we don't know, it's just how many clicks.
Sure.
To get that information and more involved for our whole boundaries and not just those who have students.
Yeah, that's a continual struggle. Scott and I, we tried the postcard.
The infamous postcard.
The infamous one. I think we'll go back to something like that. It's critical that we get them involved. And the earned media piece, there's a reason that was so long on there. That's a big part of what we do. Tonight, earmuffs, Heather Ann Wagner, your competitor's going to have a cool story. Todd Coons on a fundraiser to help a family with cancer. She's going to be live in our district office tonight. We work with the Post-Register, East Idaho News. We get a lot of credit for the social media and stuff that we do here, but there's a lot of earned media that we do as well.
So, Randy, just for context on the postcard, last year, right around this time, we sent out a postcard to families, to all registered voters in the district. So, sending postcards via registered mail is not an inexpensive venture, so it cost us several $1,000s. Had on their way for people to sign up to get news from us, and out of the roughly 20,000 we sent out, I think we had fewer than 10 that came back. There were people actually, that actually went on and said that, they would like to receive news from us. And so it is something I continually think about, of how do we reach a larger audience. It's one thing, I'm not on Facebook a lot myself. I appreciate with Facebook because there's no boundaries with Facebook. So anybody who wants to follow, or friends that are sharing, the information's there if people will get there. So if board has other ideas on how to reach people who don't have kids in our district, I'm happy to hear it, but I really thought we'd get a better return on the postcards than we did. So
work in progress.
I was going to say 20 years ago, you could take an ad on the Post-Register and it got to most everybody. Now, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of sites where people get information.
Right.
And I don't know how we disseminate the information so they have the information to make a good choice, those who are interested in learning.
And we're looking at Google Analytics so that we can
get into some of those news feeds. There's a number of things that we're trying to get better at. One thing I'm trying to get better at, last time, Paul, we went like 2.5 hours, and this is going like 20 minutes. So.
I remember that.
Were you there for that too?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So.
Well, and with regards to the financial information, I mean, we have our audit reports, and it's, you know, the financial statements, it's a 100-page book. And so to pick out critical information that people can look at and understand at a glance is a challenge. Because
I was going to say, like the pandemic money, the federal pandemic money, a lot of people think it's just sitting there, but it's been used so that they didn't have to do levies. But I don't think 90% of people in the district know that.
Right. And that's a project that Guy and Austin, it's not Kahoot, he corrected me on that, we've been working on, and we've been waiting until after the legislative session was over, but it's critical that we take that information and put it in a form that people can understand. And so watch for the financial section, or the, is it financial? Yeah, just that financial section of the website to drastically change with videos that are embedded from YouTube, so that people understand what that is, because that's a key, that's a vulnerability going forward.
One page with just highlights and then change it the next.
I'm a bullet point guy, yeah, bam, 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 and then some videos too, because I'm visual that way.
There's 103 pages in expenditures for this month that I read today. That's the most boring thing I read in a long time.
did you read 103 pages?
103 pages.
Holy mackerel.
Got to do it once, so I can say I did.
Real quick, I've been on a number of boards and committees, and I don't envy you guys. You guys are, it's just amazing what you do, and good luck tonight. I know you have some big decisions to make, so thank you.
I just want to, I guess it's more of a statement than a question. Sorry, I probably did that wrong. Again. I lose track of how long I've been on the board, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been. And I felt like when I got here, we had this resource. You and Sam were here, and you could tell it was the beginning of something that was going to be helpful, but it was still kind of like, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is it feels to me like it's arrived, like it actually accomplishes a very significant communication strategy, significant information going to parents, and I just commend all of you for that. It's come a long, long ways, and I think you deserve a lot of credit.
Thank you. And I get more credit than I deserve for this stuff, but it's a Scott saying of having the right people on the bus and having him as superintendent. That's what we're missing. So it's huge.
I have one more, is Lyndon Oswald's gone, but there's got to be young people who are interested in your careers, and some kind of mentoring program, and have them get involved in some of the broadcasts from the respective high schools. I think could be excellent as well.
That's on my to-do list. We were just talking about maybe CTE certification, so I can do some of that. So that'd be wonderful. Paul, you had a question.
No comment. Well, I guess a question. Do you do the app also?
I don't. Again, it's a team. So our content goes to that. So I produce content for it. But Abby Annis is our web person, and she's been phenomenal to work with.
And that is also very helpful. And I see your stuff on there, but I think it's amazing that we have an app for our district. That's pretty cool.
Abby Annis was very instrumental in our new website, and it's just amazing. I hear so many comments
Sam, Mike,
on that.
Mike, please.
Come on, Sam. Touche. Abby Annis is an essential part of our team. I have to say, she's not here tonight, but everything on the website, she's just worked tirelessly on that website, and I cannot even commend her enough on how wonderful that is. And I have to also comment, Gray, wow, these mics hate us tonight in a different way. I think ultimately we were preparing for that moment. We had no idea what this district was going to face with the pandemic, and we were boots to the ground, ready to go, day one. And I didn't know about it, Phil didn't know about it, superintendent didn't know about it, no one in this world knew about it. But for some reason, Phil had this huge picture and he saw that vision, and we were ready when the pandemic hit, and now we're just taking off.
Yep. I love how you said that, because we have not plateaued at all. We're finally getting ready
We're
to go.
still climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your new blog.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you all know this, but of course there's a ton more to do, right? And Randy's talked about this, all of us have worried about this issue of, how do we engage with people other than parents? That's a significant challenge in and of itself, to engage with parents, and then it's just that much harder to get people who, generally speaking, aren't all that interested until they're interested, and that's just a challenge that.
Or until it's too late.
Until it's too late.
I love when they say, "Oh, I didn't know there was a blog." I'm like, well, I don't know how to get more information out. That's the frustrating part.
Yeah, it's hard to engage with people who don't want to engage.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll put banners, big banners up at busy intersections about the bond. If this is the time to have your input, or don't complain afterwards.
What was it? I suggested you like a unicorn suit in the roundabout last time. I think I remember something like this.
Not all of Phil's ideas are good ideas.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Thanks,
Appreciate it so much. Sam, it's your good work. Next item is proposed policy U4301, bullying, harassment, and intimidation for final adoption. Dr. Wilson?
Yeah. So appreciate the board taking the time to look over this policy. Had a good conversation today with Randy with it, and I'll just say with any policy, usually once we adopt it, then we start finding, there are some things we may want to do different. But I really appreciate the committee that worked with us to put this together, several of whom are here this evening, and definitely recommend that the board approve this for final adoption. And then if there are things we need to amend or adopt as we implement it, then we'll certainly be bringing it back for revisions.
Any questions or comments from the board on this policy?
I just want to express the ones I had that I spoke with him, and as long as a couple of them was social bullying, and it talks about intentionally excluding an individual. The second one is telling others not to be friends with an individual. There is a wide ranging of circumstances that they could come to, a birthday party, they can only take 5 people in the van to go swimming, was the example I used. And so they don't invite this social group that might have 12. Are you going to get a call from the mother of one of those girls saying they've left my daughter out? It's not an ideal world, but also I think telling others not to be a friend with an individual, if it's out there that everybody can see it, that's one thing. But if it's between two people and some parent sees that and says, let's just say, the example I used with him was a dating girl goes out with a guy and he's inappropriate with her, and she tells her friend, I would stay away from that guy. Is that going to be interpreted in that same way? So that, and then the one of equal individuals, playful teasing between relatively equal individuals is generally not considered to be bullying. That's a pretty ambiguous term to have around for everything. Is it a pecking order? Is it race, religion? You have all that to bring in. Somebody could say, inside their race, a term that is a teasing term, but if someone outside their race says it, it's offensive. And, the rules got to be the same across the board. But I just don't think we want a Pandora's box. I'm not opposed to voting on it tonight, but if there was a way to come back and address a few of those issues, as I read through it, that's the only thing. I think it's great. It's critical that it's confidential. Someone can report anonymously and it's protected. That's where a lot of the help is going to come. If they're exposed, they could be, obviously, you won't get near that information. And following these offenders all the way through is critical. The pattern will be established and it'll be dealt with, typically, I don't think we'll see it in the high school years if it's been dealt with in junior high and even in elementary. So I think that part's great. It's just intentionally excluding the individual. That happens all the time. Friendships change, and especially the sophomore year. I always thought the sophomore year is when the children decided, what road am I going to go down? And sometimes they didn't parallel. And they basically had talked as friends and said, if you're going to do that, I can't be your friend anymore. Whether it's language, drugs, dress, different things change different people's perspective. And who their friends were. They started picking the wrong time of friends that I don't want to hang out with, or not me, but one of these young people. So those are the only things I read through the thing that I thought I would want the verbiage to be changed. But
Yeah, can I just maybe speak
Go
to
ahead,
that?
Scott,
So
yes.
I appreciate that feedback, and I just say with any policy, what I've learned is we can never write a perfect policy that addresses every potential situation. So without a doubt, our principal's professional judgment, our teacher's professional judgment, those things are always going to come into play to interpret situations and really determine, yes, does rise to the level of bullying or it doesn't. That specific language came from stopbullying.gov, which is kind of, I would say, the most often used source that we've used as we've looked at both providing training about bullying and using definitions for it. So I think they're legitimate concerns, Randy. Like I said, for me personally, I'd recommend we adopt it, and then if we do get significant concerns with things being over-reported, then we can come back and say we've really got to tighten this up, because it has opened up a Pandora's box. But really, our professional judgment of our principals will be a significant gatekeeper on this. And then if people disagree with principal's judgment, they have that recourse to appeal it through me as a superintendent and ultimately with the board. So,
well, I think that's so critical, and I think that, for example, a skirmish on the playground, somebody can interpret that of one kid bullying the other kid.
Yeah.
Because there was a skirmish. So who knows how that would turn out, but yeah, how the principals deal with it is so critical.
Yeah, so we kept that language so we'd have, again, I guess, a consistent reference through our policy and then through stopbullying.gov, and so we wouldn't end up in a situation where we're defining policy or bullying one way, and then if teachers or principals are using stopbullying.gov as a resource and they're defining it differently, now we're going to have questions about, well, which is it or isn't it? So that's why I use that as, I guess, an official source for the definitions that we used in the policy.
Okay.
one last one, and we talked about that before, was third party off campus, reaching the level that it affects the child's education. That's another pretty ambiguous and left to be interpreted. So I guess we see how it goes.
No, and you're absolutely right. We've had, I'd say, several things brought to our attention lately, and our conversation has been, is this a school issue, or is this not, because it's something that happened on social media, and really we have to see if it's going to have that impact at school before we even have the authority to step into it. So
thank you. That was going to be my point.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Jason or Heath, do you have anything else you want to share? It may be helpful. Again, I'm speaking from my view. We've got Levi, Ty here, and Craig as secondary principals, and Corey. I guess anything I said that you feel you want to clarify, or do you have any other?
I think you're right on. I think it's important that people understand we don't make those decisions in isolation either. I mean, there's a lot of collaboration and communication when things come up about what it is, what it isn't, and the best course of action. So if you try to write a policy to address everything, and we talked about the financial statements, that would be a policy manual.
I would add, just from Hillcrest's perspective, since having our anonymous tips and things that the committee came up with, like, I just think the prevalence of kids knowing that it's an issue and it's right in front of them all the time, that, like, as was mentioned earlier by Holly, like, it's significantly decreased the amount of conversations I've had to have as an assistant principal related to bullying, and it's been super positive. And just want to thank the
the board, the district leadership, and the committee for getting together to like make the time to help remedy the issue. So.
One last comment, so it's on the record. It was when we discussed this earlier. Was third party. A poor behaving parent can, at the end, result in dismissal from a team sport of the child, even though their behavior was within norms.
You mean the child's behavior was within norms,
norms,
but the parent's behavior.
But the child could be dismissed because of the parent's behavior. That's a tough one, and we'll see how that one washes out. And I guess anybody can appeal that process all the way up, and so I guess we got to start somewhere, and that's a good place to give you a tool, because some parents think their children should be playing in the NBA and the NFL, and they're not quite that good.
Well, I just know when I was a second grader, I got beat up by 2 kids, and there was nothing about bullying then. So.
Still recovering.
Yeah, still recovering. Obviously, because I still remember it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for participating in this. I will now consider a motion from a board member on adopting this policy.
I will so move.
Second.
Moved by Carissa Coates, seconded by Greg Calder. Is there any further discussion from the board on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
That's the first you've ever got applauded
That's
for a policy.
Right. All right, finance and operations, Guy Wainsgard.
Good evening. So we have for you tonight, okay, thank you. So back in October, we had the auditors here to present the audit report for fiscal year 21. And that was just one piece of it because the guidelines from the federal government were not complete, so they could not complete the audit for all of our federal funds. And so rather than having them come make a full presentation tonight, I can just tell you that they have completed the audit, and the bullet points for Phil, that there were no audit findings with our federal funds last year. So we just need that report approved so that we can send it to the state.
No adverse findings.
Correct.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Greg Calder, seconded by Paul Jenkins. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. Okay, Guy, next, fee hearing.
So according to Idaho statute, anytime we increase a fee by more than 5%, we have to advertise that in the newspaper and hold a public hearing. So the list that you have in your packet are the fees that meet that criteria. They have been in the newspaper for 2 weeks, and tonight we are here to have a public hearing where public can make comments on these proposals. I'll talk just a little bit about those, some of the specifics here, and then we can open it up for people who may want to address any of these. The first two are ones that you would normally see. Pine Basin, we're asking for an increase just to cover the cost of food. The food prices, as everyone knows, have gone up significantly, and so that's the purpose of that piece, as well as the school breakfast for adult and second meals, just due to freight costs and increase in meals. Normally, we would also see on here an increase for student meal prices. So even though meals have been free for the last 2 years, starting next school year, every indication we have now says that we will be back to paid lunches. But as I worked with Heather Plain, there was no need to raise those prices for students, so that price will stay the same. The remainder of the fees shown on here, you'll recall over the last year we worked on updating the fee policy, and so this this is bringing many of those fees into compliance with where they need to be, as well as a mix of some things that are actually increasing due to inflation and different costs. And so there are a number of those. I won't go through each one, but I think it would be appropriate before we go to the hearing that if there are questions from the board that we could answer those. Several of the principals are here, that we could answer any questions the board may have about the proposed increase.
I do have one. Yes. The line item of Bonneville High School ballroom dance going from $195 to $450.
Yep, and I'm going to look to Levi and see if he has any insight on there. I'll tell you that in a lot of these, the travel piece is what's driving the increase in lots of these costs, and I don't know if that's specifically with this one.
Yeah, I would say really that the ballroom program has grown to the point they're competing a lot more, and they're going a lot more places to do things, and that just increases the cost. It's a club, so there's no funding source at all to support them, and so it's completely extracurricular, not tied to the school day, but we felt like, you know, it needed to be on here because it is a fee that they're charging for travel and costuming and food and lodging when they go to the various competitions that they attend.
So that makes a whole lot of sense when it becomes food and lodging, particularly in the world today. So thank you. Thanks for the explanation.
Can it be the option like Hillcrest does and do $45 a month? Maybe that's easier on some of the families. Isn't that what it says in here somewhere?
I believe there was one.
Thunderbridge High School Ballroom monthly dues are $45.
Yeah, I think the principals and the club advisors are very willing to work with students, and I don't know that there's any requirement that it has to be paid up front, but certainly can set up a payment plan.
There's a number of items on here, Guy, that were zero last year, but have a dollar amount this year. For example, Hillcrest High School Summer Girls Basketball Camp was zero. Now it's $75.
Yeah, those are some that we're bringing into compliance. We may not have had a fee, and I'm not sure if those actually existed in prior years.
Maybe a pandemic.
I think they were charging it, but it wasn't recognized as a fee, and so that's what Guy means. And he says bringing to compliance is we've now identified everything that we hope everything that should be is now before the board, where before some things were not.
So as I understand it, all of these fees, this entire schedule is totally voluntary to the families.
Yes, yep, they only pay if they participate in these. None of these are tied to credits or courses.
So can a parent can obviously complain about the fee, but to come back on the district and say, you're charging too much money because this is supposed to be free education.
Right.
That's,
yep, these
we're clear there.
Yep, these are all clubs, extracurricular activities that none of these would be part of what happens during the regular class.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Okay, we can now open it up to patrons to participate in the hearing for these fee increases. Are there any patrons that would like to participate? Okay, seeing none, we'll now call for a motion to approve the fees outlined by Guy Wainsgard.
I so move.
Second. Oh, go ahead. Chris got it.
Second.
Okay, we've got Greg Calder made the motion to approve, second by Carissa Coates. Any further discussion?
I'll just say that $450 for the ballroom dance is pretty cheap.
It can get a lot worse.
Well, I think that if you're paying a private dance company, you're paying triple. So, you know, to be able to do that activity, I mean, I think that we're trying to keep it fairly reasonable.
It's a great program too at Bonneville. Super good program. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Takes us down to, Guy, you're still there, Transportation Services request.
Yeah, so there's a policy, little not known to many, in our policy that says if anybody wants to use our buses, then the board needs to approve that. So in my time here, I don't believe we've had any of those requests. This year, we've had 2 requests come to us. One from the Bonneville County Sheriff. They're doing a sheriff's camp in June that would like to have some transportation. And then the city of Ammon in connection with Ammon Days. If you've been there, the parking that day is quite a fiasco. And so they're hoping to have people park at Hillcrest High School, Sand Creek area, and then we would bus them back and forth for them. So those are the 2 requests. Our standard rate is $4 a mile, and I think that's where we would start, but I would hope it'd be okay if we negotiate with them a little bit. The city of Ammon especially said that they would could do some advertising for us for employment and do some different things, and so I think it's very appropriate to work with them on the cost of those. But the board just needs to approve the use of the buses for those activities.
So on the agenda, we have 2 motions required. One for the sheriff's camp. So I'll now entertain a motion to allow the Bonneville County Sheriff's Department to now, we provide the drivers?
Yes, yes, the drivers and the bus.
And the bus.
And I can't say this for sure, but we have office staff who work during the summer, and it would most likely be somebody who's already working that would be driving these.
Before motion, can we have discussion?
Yes.
The Ammon Days, they want 4 buses going back and forth to Hillcrest School. The only concern I see is there are a lot of people, and there's a lot of parked cars. There's liability of somebody going out and getting hit. The sheriff one, they want to run out to the shooting range and 1 or 2 other locations. And I don't know how many people that involves, but 4 buses, doing 40 people at a time, and 4 of them going, that's 160 every trip. If we've never done it, is it worth the exposure?
I think so. When I've talked to Randall with the city of Ammon, they're very willing to work with us and find a way to make it work right. Because there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of kids running around, and so I think we'll have to be very strategic in how we make that happen. And I think if we get to the point where we're not comfortable that we can do it safely, that we would have to pull out.
But our drivers who are trained and experienced will be driving the buses.
Yes.
Our record is excellent with our trained bus drivers.
Right.
With our own children, so.
Yep.
It's just all
I appreciate that though, Randy, yeah.
And so if we do it, I would recommend whoever's over transportation be there and make that call that they feel it is safe.
Yep, yep. This request came through Pam, and so we will work with the city of Ammon to make sure that happens.
Yeah, certainly legal counsel could be involved if you needed to do some indemnification things or that kind of thing, so that maybe the city of Ammon could take that responsibility in terms of consequences.
And it needs all my concerns.
Okay.
They could get a short-term policy on that too.
Yeah, the city of Ammon could.
City of Ammon could. But
yeah.
I think our attorney and their attorney work very closely.
Yes. They do know each other.
And we do require that short-term policy of $1 million for outside building rentals. So I don't know why we couldn't incorporate something like that in our.
That would make sense.
Can we include that in the motion, Scott, or do we want to just
We'll
approve it?
We'll take that as a directive.
Okay.
And if you want to say approved contingent on, consultation with legal counsel, we're happy to do that. We'll do it anyway, so.
Okay. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the sheriff's camp bus transportation.
I would so move.
Moved by Paul Jenkins. Second by Carissa Coates. Any further discussion on that motion? favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, now I'll request a motion on the Ammon Days bus request.
I would so move.
Second.
Moved by Paul Jenkins, seconded by Greg Calder, with the additional directive to have legal counsel review that for liability reasons.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion?
Would that include the insurance policy? Yes.
I think that's what we're discussing. I mean, I think that's
more than just the legal.
Yeah, more than maybe more than legal counsel, but the insurance policy part of it. And maybe we could have a report back, Scott.
Yeah.
With how that turned out.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Guy. Okay, we'll invite Heath Jackson to present fiscal year 2023 boundary change proposal to the board.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to work through and identify challenges and hardships. 3 years ago when Scott offered me this position and asked me to take on these responsibilities, one of the first assignments he gave me was boundary changes. And I now understand why.
Who knew?
But the reality is 3 years ago we made some fairly significant boundary changes that went in a different direction. It's hard to anticipate what's going to happen over a short period of time. I would have never guessed that we'd be back 2 years later after moving programs from Mountain Valley to Summit Hills, recognizing we made some changes in other schools. And the reality that we're facing right now in our community is constant change is going to be the norm, and growth is the new norm. And I agree completely with Holly's statement of our special education population is growing as quickly as the rest of our population, and it's putting us in a situation that we're not being able to keep up right now. We spent a lot of time with the facilities committee last fall into the winter looking at a variety of different options, and we explored boundary changes, we explored split sessions, we explored selling property. There were lots of different things that were discussed, and what I can share is it's really easy to stand and say we need to do boundary changes. We need to move kids around and put them into different schools where we have space, and it's an easy thing for somebody to recommend and make a suggestion, but I assure you it's a much more difficult situation when it affects your family, when it's your neighborhood that's being moved, when it's your children that's switching schools. And so it's a challenging and hard situation to be in as a district. And I told Scott 3 years ago, I think we can get by 4 or 5 years. I hope that we're not coming back in 2 years, and here we are 2 years later in the same situation. And unfortunately, I'm afraid we're going to be in the same situation in 2 years, and we've got a lot of decisions to make in the district to accommodate the growth that's happening. So with that, we've spent a lot of time looking at the different impacts and neighborhoods, and I've shared with the board for the last 2 years the concern of the Iona corridor, Iona Road, Iona Elementary, Summit Hills Elementary, Discovery Elementary, and the continual boom of new residents that are growing in every area from Hit Road all the way out into Iona. And so as we've looked at a number of different options, we presented to the board in a public meeting several weeks ago, Facebook Live. We've reevaluated, we've shifted, we've made other recommendations. We've driven through the different neighborhoods that are impacted. Many have been to the schools that are being recommended to make changes to and start looking at what it would take to be able to accommodate the students that are coming there. We've looked at modular moves. Some of these changes are conditional on being able to move modulars, and so John Pym's been working and getting on the schedule to adjust some of the modulars and move them to different locations. For example, Discovery Elementary, to make sure that we can accommodate the growth and continue to accommodate that growth so that we can house the students that live in those boundaries, as well as the programs and the special needs students that need to attend these schools. So as we've looked at the proposed ERR programs, locations and boundaries, We would like to continue and move forward with our recommendation that we expand the resource rooms in the district and identify 3 elementary schools and have a dedicated space for those rooms. And I think that's a critical component of what we're talking about. 2 years ago, when Mountain Valley moved to Summit Hills Elementary and created an official ERR program at Mountain Valley Elementary, we moved 2 classrooms. The following year, we added a 3rd classroom, and this year we moved the 4th classroom to Bridgewater Elementary. And so in a 2-year period, the number of students that we anticipated moving in that program required us to expand 2 additional classrooms at that elementary school. And so as we're looking for the future, we're also recognizing that that's not going to change. And so having 3 dedicated classrooms at each of these 3 schools allows us to expand and grow from what we currently have of 7 ER classrooms currently at Summit Hills Elementary, 1 at Bridgewater, and 3 at Mountain Valley Elementary. And so it allows us to dedicate those classrooms and identify and align with the middle schools and the high schools. At the same time, I think it's important that, as Dr. Wolstenheim's pointed out, we will continue to work through IEP team meetings, identify needs of students, work with our director, Dr. Thurber, to make sure that needs of individual students are met. I share some of the same concerns that were brought up tonight. As the Director of Planning and Personnel, I recognize the hardships of the staff that we've had this year. We've had a number of positions that have gone unfilled throughout the school year. We're continuing to recruit, and we're working to identify ways that we can bring people into the school district. But we're in a unique situation in our community right now where anybody can go to a number of fast food restaurants in our town and make significantly more than they can working for the school district. And that creates challenges and problems for us. And so we're committed to identify what we can do to better recruit, provide the services that are needed in these programs, and ensure that the needs of the students are met at each of these 3 locations. So with that, I would entertain questions regarding the proposed boundary change and alignment of those ERR programs.
So this is a separate action?
No, it's all in the same action.
Okay. So a question on this, it was brought up tonight. Can we be assured that, so we're moving an ERR program from Summit Hills to Cloverdale. There's 38 kids roughly. How can we be assured that the facilities at Cloverdale can be modified to meet the needs of those children coming to that school by next fall?
I think the first key area is that Cloverdale is ADA compliant. There are things that need to be adjusted. And John, I don't know if is John still here? Do you mind just coming up and sharing some of the things that you found in your walkthrough?
So recently, Dr. Thurber, Darren Foreman, our maintenance supervisor, myself, the building principals walked the buildings of Bridgewater, Cloverdale, looked through them, made a determination based on Dr. Thurber and the principal as to what they would need in each of those schools to accommodate the programs as far as restrooms, additional spaces that the programs require. And in each case, we believe that we'll be able to make that happen over the course of the summer. We'll be able to make adjustments to restrooms, make adjustments to existing spaces. I know that Cloverdale, for instance, they've kind of got an old faculty workroom that we're going to remove all the cabinets and remake that room so that it fits the needs of the students. The layout of Cloverdale actually works out pretty nice for the 2 different groups that are going to be involved, age group wise, so they have appropriate access to restrooms and so on as well, and they're not like crossing, through the halls, passing, like the younger kids passing through the older kids and so on and so forth. So after doing that walkthrough, I feel really confident that the physical side of the process we can make things work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got Dr. Thurber on the phone. If there are questions, she may be able to answer better than I can.
I'm glad she's with us, yeah. So maybe fill her in on the question.
Yeah, so, Yvonne, there were questions just about, maybe to paraphrase, so prior to us moving the ERR program not moving, but splitting the ER program at Mountain Valley and adding the classrooms at Summit Hills, that students were at Summit Hills receiving, designated as ERR and receiving medical services. So the same concerns we received in emails as far as would those students be able to receive the same medical services at Cloverdale, or would they be allowed, would we continue what they called a mini ERR at Summit Hills, if that was the best way to meet those children's needs?
Okay, so I think the question is best answered with yes and yes. We have begun having meetings with individual families, and there's really no easy answer because we always have to remember there's an I in IEP, so that stands for the individual and individualized education plan. At this point, we have made a decision for one student who has extensive medical needs to remain at Summit, but that student, I don't want to share a lot of details just because I don't want to risk that student's anonymity or that family's anonymity, but suffice it to say that we considered academic concerns as well as medical concerns, and the best fit for that student was actually Summit Hills. Now, every single family will be considered on an individual basis, but for the most part, the students who are currently in extended resource rooms at Summit will move to the schools that have, if the board approves it, will be moved to the schools we had outlined in our proposal, and they will receive medical care at the schools we've outlined in our proposal. There are just maybe 2 students, probably a maximum of 3 students, that we will be having meetings where that may or may not be the very least restrictive environment for those students, and we anticipate grandfathering, for lack of a better term, those students into Summit until they go to the middle school where they will have their needs most appropriately met. And then new students, as they come in, we will work to meet those students' needs at the schools that we proposed.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
We'll keep you on the line and see.
Okay.
Other questions from the board?
I just have a quick one. I presume the funds to do these projects, for lack of a better word, would just come out of the plant and facilities?
Correct. We always try to keep a balance for like ADA situations, so if we run across a situation where we have to deal with those. And then we have a general maintenance, budget that we use to deal with these other things. I think the only issue for us in this move, from a fund standpoint that we really didn't budget for, is we're talking about maybe additional modular at Discovery.
Yeah.
And so.
And that's not that's related to the next boundary change.
Right.
Okay.
And so from a funding standpoint, that's the only one that I think we're going to scramble a little bit to try and figure out how to do that.
Okay. And that's approximately how much?
About 75,000 probably, yeah.
That one's a little bit more because of the power situation.
Okay.
Typically, we're about 25,000 to move the modular.
Yeah, but the other 50's for getting the power in the right spot and all that. Okay.
So I have a lot of thoughts, and I hope that a question fruitions from this, but, so I get where these parents are coming from. We all know that my daughter is affected. She's part of the ERR classroom. Now, she is not medically fragile. I think the majority of the kids in the ERR classrooms are not medically fragile. However, those that are medically fragile, let me say, I am thrilled that we are expanding the program. I love the idea that my kid is going to go to high school with my other kids. that she's gonna get to, you know, I'm gonna have all of my kids in one school for maybe one time in my whole life, right? So there's a lot of the ideas, the process that I like. The things I worry about are, you know, can we afford more nurses? Can we afford, because I know that every kid is worth the money. I'm not gonna say that they're not, but the money that we have, can we afford to do that? So I love the idea. I like that we're putting, you know, 3 dedicated classrooms in different locations. I feel bad for this principal at Summit, just because I'm sure you're in IEP meetings all day, every day. But ideally, in a perfect world, would it be that we have an ERR and a DRR and a resource room in every one of our schools? Yes, and I pray that we get to that point because the needs are there. But that nursing thing is probably one of the biggest chunks of concern.
One other question or thought.
Can I speak to that nursing concern thought?
Go ahead, Dr. Thurber.
So I think that's primarily, that was primarily our concern in having those meetings with these individual families. The students who we have looked through all of their IEPs thus far, we do not have any students that we are currently outside of the couple meetings we still have scheduled and the meetings we've already had. We do not have students that need nursing needs that go beyond basic toileting and things that CNAs can provide. So when we have a student who has, and we will likely always have 1 or 2, and maybe more, but when we have a student who has a significant medical need, like we do have a student at Summit, one of the things that I wasn't clear on that I have learned through this process is that they have a procedure for this student when this student has an emergency, and so there's nurse 1, nurse 2, nurse 3. They all have an assignment if there's a critical situation, and for those 3 nurses or 4 nurses or however many there are for that critical situation, each one of those nurses has a backup person in case they are absent. And each one of those second backups also has a backup. And honestly, right now, we do not have another school where we are capable to have those backups. So our intent is to keep some level of, until our programs expand to where we can have that backup to a backup to a backup. Our intent is to keep those students that have those critical needs at Summit, where we have the nursing staff. We realize that is, and I think that's really important just to show that we know that, and I think that's one of the things we've run into as a misunderstanding is there is no such thing as an ERR kid. There are students who have needs that come from an ERR unit, or they have needs that come from maybe a DRR classroom or a medical classroom. But we don't have a definition of an ERR student. And I think when we start talking about students in that way, that's when emotions start to really get stirred up, because my ERR student looks much different than your ERR student, if that helps at all. But we would never put a child in a dangerous situation based on where a program was located.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Thurber. Randy?
The moms of these kids probably should have a medical degree in something from what they've learned. And can we use them some as consultation as we develop these rooms and make sure it has what they need? If it's that individualized, if we're down to a handful of children?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Randy, that I think that's a key thing with individual education plans is those parents who know the students and the needs. As we are expanding and looking at the actual classrooms, I hope that's something that will be taken into consideration as John and his teams are going over and looking at them and seeing what the needs are, seeing what we have at Summit Hills, working with Dr. Thurber to look at the IEP needs and be able to gather input from all of those to, including the parents, to build these programs and facilities that will accommodate those needs. It is a challenge. I worked at 2 high schools that programs were created, I don't want to say as an afterthought, but the building was not designed for that. And we retrofitted those programs. It's a little bit of a different situation because at Hillcrest, I was kind of on my tail end at Hillcrest and getting ready to leave. It was a slower process because then it wasn't an immediate, we're moving these programs there next fall. It was a couple of students coming in and built over time. Bonneville, we added an additional wing and then expanded classrooms as the program grew, and made some of those adjustments and accommodations. So absolutely, we have the ability to retrofit and make these classrooms accommodate the needs of the students, but it's not going to be the same as if it was built for it. It's not going to be like the facility at Black Canyon or Thunderbridge or Discovery, Summit Hills, that had the intentional design. We will use the space that we have to retrofit to meet the needs, but obviously the plan in advance to have those facilities built in is a better process to start.
One other question, if I may indulge. I don't know the proper protocol, but 2 of these seem to be very related, and that is the K-3 Literacy Intervention Plan, which is going to add to our overcrowdedness.
Right.
So before we vote on this one, can we have him give us a general how many classrooms that's going to take and how we're going to cover it before we vote on this one?
Yeah, and if it's okay, I can continue looking at the rest of the boundary recommendations and then give you an idea of classroom space available. I know Jason will be talking a little bit more about the kindergarten, but I can give you a general idea of how we may be able to accommodate that recommendation with the space that we have. And so if there's no other questions, particularly about the ERR.
Yeah, let's find out if there are other questions from the board on this ERR.
One more question. Is the decision being made just to make these 9 classrooms for the special ed department? It's not moving programs, it's just saying these 9 classrooms are set aside for this program? Because after all the discussion, that's kind of what I've heard, like it's because every kid is individualized of where they're going to attend school, but we're just making more room for classrooms.
No, I think it's more than that, Chris. And so in my mind, and the reason why the board is considering this, where in the past we just, like the decision to move the classrooms from Mountain Valley to Summit, that was never brought to the board. That was just an administrative decision that was made. So in my mind, and what we talked about is, we're asking the board to approve the geographical designation for the ERR programs. But that's the first level. Least restrictive environment is always going to trump that. So, but what we're saying is we're creating 3 elementary programs specifically to feed into those high schools. And unless the least restrictive environment dictates otherwise, that would be where the children would attend school. And of course, they'd still have the option for open enrollment like any other student.
Okay.
And then within those geographical areas to dedicate 3 classrooms in each of those buildings. Right now, our intent is to move forward with all 3 of those classrooms. If we were in a situation that we only needed 2 at one of the schools right now, it would be with the knowledge that our intent is to have 3 classrooms in those buildings. But our intent right now is to move forward with 3 in each building.
Thank you.
That was helpful to me, what you just clarified. Thank you.
Other questions from the board on ERR comments?
Sorry, one more. When we do this, can we make a commitment for X amount of years that we will not change them? I know you've committed to that in principle, and we've moved them very few times, but just for the comfort, could we say 3 years?
Yeah, so again, to Heath's point, we're designating these classrooms and adding 2 additional classrooms to do exactly that, so that we can have some relative assurance that we're not going to outgrow this space. If the point we outgrow 9 classrooms, then we're likely also outgrowing the middle schools and the high school programs. We're going to have a conversation about how do we accommodate those needs.
And we can't encumber a future board.
Yeah, future board can always change the decision that we made or whatever, but yeah.
Okay.
But if you want to put in your motion, you better ding, will not change this for the next 3 years to us, then, and again, that is our intent, is we really did want to bring some thought to this and some stability to this. As much as I appreciate the intent behind moving the classrooms to Summit, what we didn't anticipate is what was going to happen to that from a growth perspective, and I wish we would have, so that we weren't making this move so quickly after we made that one. Probably the thing, and we haven't even had any conversations related to this, but if we do bond and build a new elementary school, I could promise special education programs are going to be part of the discussion on the utilization of space in that elementary school, and what does that open up in other areas. So,
right. Okay, Heath, proceed on the next part.
So just looking at the elementary boundaries, we've made adjustments. If you remember from the first Facebook Live to the second meeting, we spent a lot of time looking at and evaluating what might have the least impact. We're proposing boundary changes in one significant area. So Iona Elementary right now is our largest elementary school. They're just over 700 students, about 715 students. We anticipate continual growth. The area that's highlighted there, it says area Busta Falls Valley. The majority of that is new construction. In fact, I think all of it's new construction. There's about 65 homes currently under construction at some phase of being framed, and we would anticipate any time in early to midsummer to late fall, families will move into those homes and they'll be occupied. Area right in the area where it says area is bust, that's the new roads that Rockwell has developed. They are currently pouring foundations, and typically what my experience has been is they pour anywhere from 50 to 75 foundations. They work through the summer, they get those as close as completion, and then they'll pour another group of foundations in the fall so they can work through the winter and have those homes ready. And that's what we're experiencing right now with those homes being completed. And so as we look at the area that we're proposing to Busta Falls Valley, the idea of creating another island, we've worked really hard in the district to remove those islands, that we have compact areas and neighborhoods that are attending the same areas. There is not a way for us to accommodate the growth and the continual growth that we're seeing, potentially 200 or 300 more homes in the next year to 2 years being moved into. There's also a highlight of a future school. That's the land that the school district currently owns. And that would be a proposal as we move towards building a school. That's where our greatest need would be right now to accommodate the growth in the northeast area of the district. And so the area in yellow would be, let me talk about the other area first. Right down the middle where the yellow boundary is between the east and the west, there's a canal that runs somewhat right down that area. That right now is split between Discovery Elementary and Iona Elementary. And so right now, half of it's going to Discovery, half of it's going to Iona. We're proposing that the area east of the canal, the area highlighted, will be moved and taken to Discovery Elementary. That moves about 115 students from Iona, drops their enrollment right around 600. And puts those 115 students into Discovery. It puts their enrollment about 630. That's if all the students go to the areas that they're now zoned for. We do anticipate there will be some students from that area that will request to stay at Iona and fill out open enrollment, which we will begin working on immediately if the board approves this recommendation. So
we have, I'm not aware of public input from those particular parents. Have we had?
I've received a handful of emails just concerned about their students have been to Iona. They like the school there. Again, it's the reality of a boundary change is as soon as it affects your neighborhood, your family, it becomes a little bit more challenging. Probably the one concern that I've heard, I have students in the 5th and 6th grade If they choose to stay at Iona, will my younger children also be approved to stay at Iona and start school there and continue moving forward? And the reality is that's open enrollment's a year-to-year situation. A lot of that's going to depend on the other growth that we're experiencing in Iona. How many new families is that going to bring? And so we can't guarantee more than a year at a time on an open enrollment. And so, yes, we want those, especially those older kids, if they've been in Iona for the last 4 or 5 years, can they finish 6th grade at Iona, and can we accommodate that? And that's what Principal Curtis and Principal Parker will be working on if this is approved, to start communicating and talking to those families. But that's the one concern that I've received from people in that area that are being moved from Iona to Discovery. The other area is that new bust area, Falls Valley, creating a island in the middle of that subdivision. That's all new construction. We have on there 0 students. There could be 1 or 2 or a handful of students that are not mapping correctly occasionally, because those are new roads. They're not identifying them in the right location. And so we will work with those families if that is indeed the case. Scott and I drove through this a couple of weeks ago. We were fairly confident that this boundary, with the exception of maybe a couple houses on the corners, is all new construction. And so there are very few, if any, students who this is going to impact right now. But as those new families move into those 65 new homes this fall, as those families start building in those other areas, they will be immediately zoned for Falls Valley. If they put in their address for a bus pickup, what school do I live in? This will be a zone boundary, Falls Valley. And I would anticipate needing to have some conversation with Rockwell to make sure they understand as they're selling these homes that this boundary is changed to accommodate the growth. So this is a little bit easier because there's not anybody right now, but I anticipate those 65 homes are sold. They're just waiting to be finished, and I would anticipate there's some families who have bought homes there that will be a little bit surprised when they move in this fall.
Okay. Anything else, Heath?
No.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation from the administration on these boundary changes, including the ERR issue. I will now entertain a motion.
So I think Mr. Smith suggested we wait on the motion until we hear about the kindergarten, the literacy plan, and I think there's wisdom in that to kind of consider the big picture of all of it.
Okay.
So it's up to you, Chad, but it's...
Well, I'm great. Thank you.
And that'll give me a minute to get on my computer and identify classroom space. I've got that on a spreadsheet, so I can pull that up and give you accurate information as we go through it.
You know, before we leave that, I just want to, comment to the Birches and the Hunts that, even though an IEP would allow your child to stay at Summit Hills, their friends will be moving, and that's weighing on my mind. I get that, and that's part of their stability. So, I just appreciate that part of it. Okay, let's move on then. So the next item is surplus property, Heath.
Yeah, so...
Or you want to go down, should we hit this other one while we're on the...
This should just take, I don't know.
Okay, this won't, okay, we've discussed this.
I won't take very long.
We're just getting warmed up, you guys. We're not ending anytime soon.
We've had some extensive conversation over the last several months about surplus property, and is there property that we should evaluate selling and seeing what the interest is. As the facilities committee met, that was one of the recommendations. As a school board and district leadership, we've talked about it off and on for the last 2 or 3 months. We are recommending tonight that we look at 2 of those properties and identify them as surplus property that would allow us to start gauging the interest. John would be able to start marketing that land and identify, is there value in us selling this property that could then be used to fund other projects. So the first is the Hit Road property. You can see it highlighted in the green just north of Costco. It's obviously a great location now that there's a Costco there. Who knew 5 years ago that was going to be a prime real estate? But it's about a 12 acre piece of land. We at one time talked about a bus barn in that area. We don't feel like that's the right location with the increased traffic flow on Hit Road, or I don't remember the numbers. I never remember the numbers, but Hit Road as it continues to expand and the traffic flow. So that would be the first property that we would recommend that the board approves to place a surplus property, which simply allows us to start entertaining the idea and gauging interest in the property. The second property, I don't see that we have that one highlighted, or else my eyes are bad. This is the area of Fairview, out towards Fairview. The subdivision where Scott's just to the south there is Timberline Estates, a developed subdivision. That's about 25 acres. We did have some interest last fall. John received a call of some potential development where they could connect into Timberline. It has kind of cooled off a little bit, but I think it's an opportunity where it's already connected to developed real estate for a developer to be able to go in and finish that area with homes and add to the problem that we're having of finding places for kids to go to school. So, anybody want to put a business out there instead? So we had asked the board to consider making both of those properties surplus and allow the district and specifically John to start gauging interest and evaluating the value of that property to determine if that's the direction we want to move forward with.
Okay, comments from the board?
I'm comfortable. I think we've talked about that in quite a bit of detail over the last several meetings, and it makes sense to me. I don't think there's a reasonably foreseeable need for the school district for those, and makes sense to me.
Estimate of $3.5 million, is that what it was?
I think that's a rough estimate, specifically on the property there on Hit Road, but it's worth what somebody's willing to pay. So right now we don't know that. And I think it gives us an opportunity to gauge is, you know, we've got other properties that we feel like have some value in the growth in the district, but this will help us gauge how to move forward with those other properties as well.
Do we have any idea when sewer will go to those?
John, do you know that information?
Really, that other piece is just up in the air a little bit right now. They're just offering those lots. They're on the market right now. There's been a variety of, you know, sand just keeps shifting, right? I think the initial plat was an effort to put retail in there. There's a lot of talk now that much of that will become high-density housing potentially in some spots. So I don't really know how that's going to proceed. But given the way everything else is going, you got to believe it can't be too long.
Which would definitely increase the property value in a fairly short time.
Well, we did have an estimate from a local realtor.
Shall remain unnamed.
I think the consideration was, you know, the highest and best use of that property when that valuation was estimated. So I think we're probably as close as we're going to get until John really gets down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and this step allows us to get down to that.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to declare these two properties, there's actually 4 parcels, as surplus property.
So move.
Moved by Greg Calder.
Second.
Second by Randy Smith. Any discussion on the motion?
I have a question.
Okay.
By making it surplus property, does that require us to sell it?
No.
It's just the instigation? That's not the right word. Investigation?
Start with that. The board declared that the property across from Mountain Valley
Okay.
was declared surplus probably 3 years, maybe even before.
Okay.
Because when we first got the appraisal on it, based on what we had paid for it and that appraisal, it just did not make sense to sell it in that market, in that climate. And then, we just kind of held on and then did a reappraisal and things looked a lot better, so.
Thank you.
Great.
Starts the process, right, basically, so.
Okay. Any other questions on that motion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I'm gonna keep going.
Keep going, Heath.
We're that time of year to start negotiations with the Bonneville Education Association for contracts for next year. The district will need to appoint a negotiation team to represent the school board. Historically, the the school board has designated the executive team, which would consist of Dr. Wilson-Hume, Mr. Wainsgard, Jason, and myself, to represent the school board and through the negotiation process as we open the master agreement and start evaluating those things. So we would make the recommendation, if the board's comfortable, to designate the executive team to work through negotiations. That's obviously a board decision, and you're welcome to take that challenge on yourself if you so choose.
Sure, come in. Do you have time to do that?
You might make that.
Yeah.
I would so move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded that we appoint the executive team to represent the board to negotiate salaries. Okay, it's been moved by Paul, seconded by Carissa. Is there any discussion on that motion?
It wouldn't include just salaries.
Right.
The master
Just the
agreement.
whole master.
The master agreement. Okay, thank you, Paul.
That word, yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you. And then finally, tonight in executive session, we discussed employee H 2022, and it's our recommendation to end probation for that employee and offer a contract to continue teaching for the district next year. And so we'd ask the board to take action from our discussion in the executive session.
Okay, do we have a motion for that?
That's a move.
Moved by Greg, second by Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jason Lords, Learning and Instruction.
You guys ready? I was planning 45 minutes. I told them they got to be ready. And Scott just told me 3, so we're going to hurry and hustle through this. But typically what happens is, and usually we're bringing our early literacy plan to you in the fall, at least over the last few years, that's what we have done, is usually the state, we put together an early literacy plan that has the literacy funding that comes with that. 6 years ago was really the first time that they put money into that early literacy, and that's where we started with Lexia and started buying some Chromebooks. I think that first 3 years, I believe it was about $500,000. And then 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago, that they added another $500,000 to that. So we had $1 million in our early literacy intervention plan that we were then using to also lower class size, different things like that. And this year, it's a little bit different. And as a part of the literacy funding is where the, I think what some people talked about was the full day kindergarten as it went through the legislature. The funding was still there. They dropped saying that it had to be for kindergarten, and so we started having conversations. And one of the things that I love, I think it probably frustrates some people, but as long as I've worked with Scott, one thing that I guarantee will happen in whatever decision that we're going through is we're gonna fight through that decision. I mean, we're gonna have lots of different conversations, and I think there are times, even with this, that I think people are a little worried of where it was going. But one thing that I know is that when we get to the end of it, we're gonna have a lot of information to be able to share not only with the board, but to share with legislators down the road of here was the process that we went through to make this decision. It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't, oh, everyone thinks this should be full-day kindergarten, so we're just moving that way. It was, I know Scott lost a lot of sleep trying to make the best decision. And every time, it felt like every morning we were coming in and have discussions about what we feel like should happen and how do we involve. And so this just kind of shows really the process that we went through. Started in our district leadership team meetings and moved to our instruction and learning team. It's a part of that. Then we started meeting with elementary principals. And through this, you know, I think we had kindergarten teachers going, "You guys aren't listening to us. We need to say. And we knew that. We were still trying to figure out even what the legislators were going to do with it for then us to make a decision. If the legislators said, we're going to fund all-day kindergarten, and here's your teachers or here's the money to pay your teachers for that, that's easy. But as it changed, we started having different conversations. Scott sent a survey to the special education and teachers in kindergarten through first grade. Then we had a meeting at Thunderbridge, which was a really good meeting. We got a lot of really good information from our K-3 teachers, and also sent out a parent survey. This is the survey results from the survey. So Scott had, as you know, Scott's technology is awesome, and in that meeting, he had a survey ready to go for teachers to start answering right in the meeting that we had at Thunderbridge, but it wasn't working with teachers' phones. Some of them didn't have service, and so they're trying to answer, and they're like, well, I swear I pushed that one, but now it says I pushed this because of the survey. Anyway, Scott, you know, threw another one together real quick, and this was the results that we got from it. And what this is showing is the teacher's number one choice. So the question was asked of, you know, what's your number one choice, what's your number two, what's your number three, what's your number four, and then this is what came out. So the all-day kindergarten, that's the one with the orange all the way across. And then to reduce maximum class size was the second one there. And really what that one was, we'd hire more teachers, kind of like what we did with literacy funding before. We hire more teachers to then lower class size. And then the next one would have been at-risk all-day kindergarten.
If all-day kindergarten happens, is at-risk all-day kindergarten an additional thing?
What
No.
have it instead of?
It was what did they feel, yeah.
Targeted.
Yeah, so instead of universal, it would have been targeted to just.
Instead of saying everybody, we're going to identify those students, and then similar to like we do with our Title I kindergarten. And then this is a response. So we have about 500. Families that have registered for kindergarten. Because right now we just assume that we're going to have about 950 over the last 12 years. 5 years. Yeah. That's about what we've had. But right now we have 500 that are have registered, and so Scott sent a survey to those parents of would you prefer all-day kindergarten, would you prefer the half-day what has always been, and then you're not sure, and this was the results from that with the 65%. And it'll be interesting to see, and we've had the conversation too as parents, as we, you know, if our plan is approved and we do offer all-day kindergarten, those parents that even said, "Oh, I'd prefer half day." Well, neighborhood kids, whatever else, and all of a sudden we have more in half day or in full day. Sorry, that we could see that happening as well. So, but this was just from that survey of those 500 parents that are registered. And then as we talked through this, of what we really want to do is the legislators are giving us that funding for K-3 literacy. So what can we do as a district to make sure that we have, I guess, the best plan for our teachers moving forward, and some of it, this is the overall big plan, and within that there's going to be a lot of conversations that are going to happen with what we want to do with the different decisions. So the first one is provide evidence-based Tier 1 curricular resources and instruction. So going back to our Phonics First that we implemented this year, and then being able to add some resources to Phonics First to be able to help our teachers with that. One of the things that we're continuing to hear is that they need more resources that fit along with the Phonics First instruction that happens with tiered reading curriculum. Basically, you know, a student reads this level, this level, this level, that we have the books that go along with that would fit with the Phonics First, and then decodable readers that students, a lot of times when you had your little ones at home, they'd take a book, and that was the book they were taking home and reading. Yeah, with my kids, hey, I need to read this book 4 times with you, and it's like, oh, okay, so we'd read through it, and just those types of things. And then provide evidence-based Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention supports. If you remember, I know Chad always remembers our literacy conversations with the pyramid. You always remember.
Precisely.
And in those, we have all of our students, tier 1 is typically that 80% of instruction, and then you have your tier 2 and your tier 3, the students that need more support. Just being able to use Phonics First. Lexia was the program that we purchased 6 years ago that we're still using. So that would be that one. And then the third thing was provide a literacy coach, intervention specialist at each school. So if you remember this last school year, we added intervention coaches or specialists to our Title I schools already had them, so they kept full-time. And then with our non-title schools, we had them share. So our non-title schools are right for this school year sharing those instructional coaches. And one of the things that we've continued to hear is that that's been helpful, but it's hard for them to split and still get into the K through 3 teachers, especially to help with Phonics First and those other interventions that they're trying to do. So that would be, we would use this funding to, and I'll show that here in a second, but we'd use this funding to have instructional coaches, one at every single one of our schools, and not use the title funding for that. And then the fourth thing is to provide universal all-day kindergarten for our kindergarten students. And this is the expected allocation from that, and it's how it's funded. It's really funded kind of in a, I don't know if it's a weird way, but it's based off of enrollment, and then it takes into account the number of students and their proficient, where they move from. If you remember from our IRI, a 1 means the student's proficient, a 2 means they're near proficient, then a 3 means they need some more intervention. So when a student moves from a 3 to a 2, we can count those students that then we would get more funding for this literacy funding. In the past, it was students that scored in the fall in the 2s and 3s. That's what we were funded off of before, but this year the funding is a little bit different, takes into a couple different things into account with that. So Scott ran some numbers just looking at enrollment, and then looking at what our proficient and the growth. So if a student scored a 1, then they were great, but if they moved from 3 to 2, then we could count them as well. That this would be our allocation. And then the FRL boost is the free and reduced lunch boost. So you take your percentage of free and reduced students, and then that correlates into the 310,000. So then it gets us to a total of the 3.229 million is what our expected allocation is.
Annually, right?
So
Yes.
for next year.
For next year, right.
But it should stay, it should just go up as our enrollment grows. We should just see that go up, and candidly, as we see these strategies working, we should see the proficiency and growth go up as well.
Yeah.
So this just passed in the legislature. Does the State Department of Education now have to write rules to implement that legislation?
No.
Or how confident are we in this funding formula?
So the State Department Finance released to Guy how many dollars they're allocating for each one of those, and that's what that's based on.
Okay.
So what's not in statute are those amounts. So the $370 per student in the enrollment column and the $485 for proficiency and growth, those dollars are not in statute. So that's the State Department's derivation of the total amount that the state funded. So if the legislature ever funds less, those amounts would go down.
Proportionally.
Right.
Yeah, and the State Department budgeted at 95% of the total, knowing there would probably be some variances. So it could go up as well.
And that's even the conversation we even had with our free and reduced. I mean, right now, because we've had free lunch the last couple of years, we feel like we don't have as accurate a number as what we had in the past when families were having to fill out the free and reduced paperwork to be able to get free and reduced lunch. And so we feel like as we move through this next year, because lunches are going back to being paid, so students would have to qualify for free and reduced to have the free or reduced lunch, that we'll be able to, I don't know if it'll go higher. I'm hoping it doesn't go lower, but that could change as well.
I think the other things that could increase it, Chad, is so the proficiency and growth column is taken using the state statute. So that's students that we had a spring score for last spring, and that that as of March had either met proficiency or growth. So what I don't have are, if we had students that weren't in our district last year that have hit that, that would only push that number up. And then if we have more students that reach that target by May, then that would push it up as well. So I feel like this is a really solid estimate, but it's actually going to be slightly on the low side.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say from our March numbers, I would be hopeful that we would have students that would move a tier into the May. And I'm actually excited from the things that we put in place for this school year with the Phonics First and with our instructional coaches, that I just really think that it's gonna improve as well. So
this just seems upside down for me. That they're paying us money. It's an incentive driven as opposed to remedy driven to move them up to. Does that make sense?
It does.
Debate, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was
Yeah,
the debate.
that was.
And I thought a lot about that. Part of my concern, candidly, with the old model is the more successful we were, the less funding we would have to continue the practices that were successful. So I really was concerned that if they keep that model, we're going to have fewer and fewer students that are at risk, and now we aren't going to be able to continue the practices that have been funded from those models. So this one, I feel somewhat better about because it is more of an incentive, but I know the more successful we are, the more it's going to sustain those programs.
Yeah.
The other one is somewhat of a self-defeating model from a funding standpoint. So
well, and
it just seems weird that we're basing anything on that particular criteria. I mean, and it's the state legislature, and I totally get that.
Yeah. We definitely feel better about the way that they've asked it this time, instead of our students, teachers trying to do as fast as early on in the year to be able to show that we had this many kids that were below proficient. It would. And this last one is just really our strategies and then the expenditure for that. So the full day kindergarten, we would, and really it was, we had lots of conversation about this when we first heard that full day kindergarten would be a possibility, and here's where things we're going to have to look at. It was like, oh man, we're going to have to double the number of kindergarten teachers we have. We also had a lot of conversation of we have title kindergarten teachers that then, if they all decide they're going to continue teaching and teach full-time, that we wouldn't have to hire as many as we thought at first. And so this takes into account 21 full-day kindergarten teachers, salaries and benefits. One of the things that we did talk about was purchasing a modular classroom. Moving the modular classroom to Discovery, because as you know, and it goes back to the conversation with boundary change and everything else, is adding kindergartens, full-day kindergarten, of course, now makes our schools even more full than they were before, and we have space in most of our schools. Moving a modular classroom to Discovery makes it so that they can have kindergarten there as well as the boundary change conversation. Literacy coaches, it would take in 14 literacy coaches. Before that was split between Title. So Title had, what was it, 6 coaches? Were we 6 and 4? Is that where we were? So Title paid for 7 and 3. Title paid for 7 with their Title funding. And then we used the literacy funding from last year to pay for the other 3 literacy coaches that the other schools were splitting that are non-title. Well, now moving to this, we won't use title funding at all. All the literacy coaches will come out of the literacy funding. So that's where you get that number. What it also does now is it takes into account that now the title funding that we had before for title kindergarten teachers and also those instructional coaches will now go back to title, and then we have conversations about how we use that to spread through our interventions throughout all of our schools. So, and then also, and like I said before, with this funding, we use Lexia the years past. We'll continue that, or we've talked about other types of programs that. Whether it's iStation or just different conversations we had with teachers. Chromebooks will come out of this as well, which has been helpful to be able to purchase 1,000 Chromebooks as we move them through for our one-to-one. And then Phonics First continue with those curricular resources as well.
So Jason,
I tried to do it in 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I read the document on board books. I understood it until we got to the financial part. But I also went to my archives and I pulled out the revised September 23rd, 2020 Continuous Improvement Plan, and it included the use of the phonics first instruction in grades K through 3.
Yes.
So that is what this program is. So when we paid for that, we're still able to utilize that. So we're not going to have to change that curriculum.
No,
Is that
that's correct. Yep. And really, that's one of the things that what we were excited for is we felt like we were making some really good changes instructionally with phonics first, and really just coming back to that focus of literacy. And we were excited to see, and I think we'll see changes. I think we'll see some improvement this school year. And then, it's great that they're putting more funding into this, but we're going to continue with phonics first, and the other part too is as new teachers are hired, we have to train there, we have to do all of those things as well. So.
okay? Comments from the board?
I have some. I guess I was under the impression we were about out of space, but what I'm learning is the extended 11 kindergartens they've already been taking pretty much the full day.
Yep.
So we're after 10 new classrooms.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it ends up being 10. That's correct.
Okay. So now we're totally maxed out.
Now we are.
So we're at least 18 months, 2 years away from if we get a bond passed. So if we come up short of space, we're either buying more temporary buildings, or we're going to push. Are we going to push the all-day kindergarten, some of those classes back out?
And those are conversations that we've had. Is if we get to some of our schools, some of our elementary schools that are out of room, and let's say they have 20 more students to go somewhere for kindergarten, we would look at whether it's busing those students to another school so they can have full-day kindergarten at another building, and those are all conversations that once if this plan is approved, that we're going to start tomorrow, and all the different conversations that are going to come from this.
So if we approve this, we'll be out of classrooms in September.
So we're still going to have pockets of classrooms around the district. So it's going to max out a handful of schools. They don't have any space available, but probably half of our schools still have classrooms available after this.
Like one or two, or
Ammon will have 3 classrooms after this. Bridgewater will have 1 because we're going to be looking at moving modulars to Bridgewater. Cloverdale is going to be maxed out. Discovery, we're proposing to move 2 classrooms to Discovery, so that'll leave them 1 extra room at Discovery. Fairview will have 2 classrooms. Falls Valley will have at least 3 classrooms, plus there's still housing the gate program at Falls Valley. Hillview was maxed out. They do not have space. I'm a little bit concerned about all-day kindergarten because they've got historically a fairly high kindergarten numbers. Iona is going to create somewhere between probably 2 classrooms with boundary change, accommodating the boundary, moving from Iona to Discovery, and then adding kindergarten. We don't create as much space there, but we should have 2 classrooms still at Iona. Mountain Valley should have 2 classrooms left. Rimrock has 1 classroom. Summit Hills will have 2 to 3 classrooms as we create some space for growth there. Tiebreaker will have 2 classrooms. Yukon's going to be right on that 0 to 1. They're on the verge of adding another kindergarten. And then Woodland Hills is still going to have 3 or 4 classrooms with the modulars that they have there. So there's only a couple of schools that it maxes out completely, but it pushes us in a really tight spot. We don't have a lot of room for growth. One benefit with the kindergarten numbers is that part of this proposal is lowering class sizes a little bit. So our class size typically has been 26 for grades K through 3. I can't remember if we settled on 23 or 24 where we ended with that discussion, but potentially that takes into consideration and adds some space right now that kindergarten will have a little bit of room to grow in most of our schools because we've lowered class sizes and added another section rather than maxing them out.
So we have just a couple places where it's like a fail-safe by moving the gate out of Falls Valley. If we needed to bus students to Falls Valley, we could
to do that, and Ammon can kind of work as a fail-safe for Hillview if it overflows, but everywhere else we're down to just 1 or 2 classrooms.
If my math was any good, that almost leaves 400 student positions yet to grow. So we won't be desperate next.
We should be able to get 2 years.
For a couple of years.
Is it fair to say that the earlier discussion, some of was originally done to help better organize elementary schools for what we anticipated to be the future growth? So we were busing less distances of the 7,000 kids in elementary. Is that fair?
I think particularly in the ERR programs, that was a discussion point, that they're on the bus for a long period of time. This puts them in better geographical areas. In some cases, our proposal is busing kids further. When we look at Island, we're now picking up an area that's over here. I guess in my directions are over here off of Iowa Road, and we're now going to bus them to Falls Valley. The reality right now is I don't think there's a lot of consideration or feasibility to shorten routes because we're just out of space in those 3 schools. And so it's really how do we open up space in Iona, Discovery, and Summit Hills rather than are we going to be able to align kids to be closer to the schools that they're living in right now.
And then, why does a literacy coach get $16,000 more than a school teacher? They masters.
Experience is really based on typically our literacy coaches are going to have more years of experience, and so they're going to be placed higher on the salary schedule. We estimated kind of I don't know what our base was, so that would be about $46,000 estimate for a salary for kindergarten. So that's kind of a teacher with about 5 to 7 years experience range, where most of our literacy coaches are going to be at a higher salary bracket because of their experience.
Yeah, so those numbers came from our current staffing, and I just ran what our average salary is for a kindergarten teacher and what our average salary is for our literacy coaches, and they are our more experienced teachers.
But funded the same way. I mean, yeah.
If both of these proposals are approved in our communication with Phil and that, it's got to be made known that if the state doesn't fund next year, if there's beginning of a recession, they're not going to fund, they're going to go conservative, then we're back to half-day kindergarten.
Yep.
And those were all those meetings that Jason listed. That was a big topic of what happens if we lose the funding.
Yeah, and not only if, for that reason, but also if the legislators who were saying we're not sure this is the answer, and now they come back and say, we think they would give us at least a couple of years, right, to be able to say we feel like it's working or not working. But if all of a sudden 3 years from now they're saying, well, we were giving the Bonneville School District $3 million, we're going to drop it back down to the $1 million, then we have a $2 million shortfall that we have to figure out what to do with.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just clarify on the 21 teachers, we do not need to hire 21 new teachers. We have 35 current teachers in the district teaching kindergarten. 9 of those teachers are part-time, and so we'll need to work with them to determine whether or not they want to be full-time or not. And so once we determine that, if we keep our numbers where they're at currently, we'll need 41 sections of kindergarten. If we increase the numbers and lower class sizes, we're looking more like that 45 to 46 range. So we're probably, if all of our teachers stay and agree to go to full-time, we're probably 10 or 11 teachers that we need to hire. If we lose some of those part-time people, then that would just increase that maybe upward to, just based on my initial conversations with principals, probably 3 that aren't sure whether they want to go full-time or not. So somewhere between 6 and 13 is what we're probably looking at for new staff to accommodate the growth.
Has there been any discussion on a kindergarten center?
Yeah, we looked at Falls Valley as a potential kindergarten center if we needed to have it, and we would move the gate program out to accommodate that. Okay. And then if we're looking at 2, we'd potentially look at Ammon as the other one.
I guess I'm a little surprised at the response of the kindergarten teachers that they are all in favor of a full-day kindergarten, because testimony in Boise was that that by the time a child reaches 3rd grade, whether they're in half-day kindergarten or full-day kindergarten, the result doesn't change that much by the time they're in the 3rd grade. Some of the kindergarten teachers I've talked to are saying yes, we need more time, but I don't need all day. And I don't know how you'd fit an extra hour in a half-a-day kindergarten to accommodate those needs, but anyway,
We did discuss that briefly, and I just don't think it's feasible from a transportation perspective.
that's the biggest problem, is the transportation.
And I think the other thing that came up was, you know, if we're extending it an hour, well, part of that time is going to be lunch. Would be a you know, a 20-minute lunch and a 20-minute recess, and then so it's like, well, then we're extending really just for lunch and recess. Why would we want to do that?
So another question with this literacy plan, Jason, is there any way that we can include something in there to help learning in the home?
Well,
encourage,
yeah, that's
provide something to parents to help them learn, help their children in the home.
Yeah. Have you seen this is appropriate, right? You've seen Dumb and Dumber? Anyone seen Dumb and Dumber? So we're talking about a reading van. That if we had a reading van like the dog van that they had, but honestly, we started conversations of how do we? I mean, Scott said. So Julie Briggs is our. She helps with literacy. She works with librarians. She helps with our preschool newsletter that we send out every month. But Scott and I had a conversation because Scott, I don't know if it was in the morning or at night that he was thinking this or shower, wherever it was. But so really what the question was how do we get more books into the homes of the students that are in our school district? And so we've kicked around a summer van that we take out with a trailer in the back and they're handing out books and just being able to try and just do that.
I mean, the reality is parents that read to their children at a young age, work with them. Half-a-day kindergarten is fine.
Yeah.
It works well. But for maybe other children that are higher risk, they need an all-day kindergarten.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that our teachers have said is with Phonics First, our new curriculum instruction that they're using, they feel like they can't, especially in kindergarten, that they can do parts of it, but if they had more time, they would be able to be more effective with it. And so I think, you know, some of those conversations have helped us to be able to say, okay, you know, and the other part too is the other part that we've talked about a lot is if a kindergarten teacher truly believes that efficacy of, you know what, I truly believe if they give me a full day, our kids are really going to move. Same thing with our K through 3 teachers. We're telling them this is our K through 3 literacy plan, that if you really believe we're doing the right things and they believe that, then it should make an impact as well.
Does this plan give the parent the option though? So if they don't want their child in the all-day kindergarten,
those are conversations that we're gonna start to have. We've had short conversations about can a parent well, and honestly, with the parental rights statutes, whatever else, I mean, a parent can, even in first grade, say, I only want my kid to come half day. I'm going to bring them for the morning, and I'm picking them up and taking them home. And so we've had some conversations of, can we say it's required just full day? Well, parents still have that choice, and so we're going back and forth of what does that plan look like. If a third of our kindergarten families say, I only want to be half day, how do we help them with that?
We'd hope to have an answer to the board on that, but our elementary principals are either attending a behavior intervention and support conference or the
prevention
conference in Boise. So we didn't have a chance to meet with them yesterday to discuss that, but that'll be a key topic for us next week.
Okay. One quick thought is they assign most of the students at the end of the year. Kindergarten coming in, they don't know who they are, so they're just randomly assigned. But if they were assigned, the teacher could go introduce himself and give them a packet of, this is where we'd love to see you be by September.
Yep.
And give them something that parallels with the learning that they're going to come into.
And what I'd say is
that'll decrease our funding, so.
So we don't want to do that. well, and honestly, I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And I feel like we've gotten better as our registration's gone online. Before, 5 years ago, 10 years ago when I was principal at elementary school, registration happened August 10th, and that was really the first time you were seeing those students. But now with our registration being online, That's why we have at least 500 students right now that have registered for kindergarten. If we can get information out, and our secretaries do and principals do a great job at the elementary school knowing families. I think a lot of times it's just those first-time families that we have a harder time getting that information to. But if we can, yeah, it'd be awesome to have all 950 registered right now so we could start planning. But.
So our boundary changes proposal and the plan that's been presented here are kind of worked, meshed together to make this whole thing work. In other words, if the boundary change fails, how does that affect this?
So then, if the board does not approve the boundary change, but you do approve the literacy plan, we would be looking at kindergarten centers and likely busing students who want to do all-day K to an alternative location that has room for them. So I don't think they're necessary. I mean, to me, it makes it much better for parents if they're both. If you're going to approve this, that you also approve the boundary change, but you could certainly approve this and not the other, and we do our very best to make it work.
Yeah.
No other school is significantly impacted.
Iona, yeah.
We would not be able to accommodate all-day kindergarten in Iona.
Yeah. And some.
And some, yeah, and some. Yeah.
We'll start squeezing this.
It was a good night.
I think the amazing thing about this is the amount of flexibility that we've been given.
It is.
I mean, it's shocking that from our friends in Boise that they were so willing to give us some opportunities to experiment.
They want your vote.
Yeah. I mean, because I could see that even if they don't reduce the funding in the future, I could see them saying, well, you have to do it this way, or whatever, which I think would be a real tragedy. Because I think part of the benefit of this is different districts are going to handle it differently, and everybody's going to learn from each other. And we'll hopefully all adapt and adjust.
But there is flexibility in this, but there are some things like I think in this legislation is the requirement that if we have a supplemental levy, we have to disclose exactly what that money is going to be used for, which is going to create additional work, maybe more expense for Guy. And we already disclose that to the patrons, so I don't understand that requirement. It seems like, yes, they're giving us some room here, but then they're tying our hands there. And I know that they want accountability, and I understand that, but I just feel like that's going too far, and that we have provided accountability to our patrons.
It's also making.
Yeah, my guess would be that because there are districts that have funded all-day K from supplemental levy, there's an expectation that they would see supplemental levies go down. Just my inference on why they might require that, but so.
Okay, any other comments from the board? So let's see, where are we? We are back to
Pick your
a
poison.
motion.
So there's this one or the boundary changes.
So let's go back. I don't know whether it makes any difference.
There's also a couple of policies.
Well,
don't forget about those. That's why I'm standing there. I didn't know.
See if we can get a standing ovation for the policy this time.
And the only part of that time was me.
so I will now entertain a motion to approve the boundary changes as proposed by the administration.
I so move.
Moved by Paul Jenkins. Is there seconded by Randy? What's your last name, Randy? Smith? Is there any further discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, now we will entertain a motion motion for the learning and instruction plan as presented by Jason Lords?
I so move.
Second.
Moved by Randy Smith, seconded by Gray Calder. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I guess I would just comment that I support and trust the administration on these issues, and I have a soft heart for those who are struggling with it. And I hope and strongly encourage the administration to meet the needs of those children the best way they can, so that we don't have anger and divisiveness in our community.
Appreciate that, Jim.
Jason Lords, proposed policy 2540.
Okay. So we do have two policies that they were just on 30-day review. Now we're asking you to approve these on final adoption. I do have one quick statement. It'll be quick. One quick statement on policy 2540. With new legislation, House Bill 650 added some wording on specific committee numbers and who should be a part of that. We wanted to get this finalized so we have a policy in place, knowing that we're going to add. I'm going to come back probably next month with those new additions to policy 2540 specifically.
That was the committee that had to have a certain number of parents.
Yes.
That kind of stuff.
Yep. And our policy had that, but what they did is specifically numbered. There's 12 members, 3 need to be teachers, a board member, a district admin, a community member, and then 6 parents. Where our policy before had it was like half of the people were educators, and then a number of different things in there. So that's what the difference will be.
If I may add 2 concerns. One is if an item is brought and gone through the process, it continues to be available. I would like it to say, if possible, if we can amend it, is that the superintendent can override that and say, we're going to take it out until the hearing. Because
if it's
let's
something
be honest,
that's,
who reads every page of every book, of everything that's out? And the second one is, if it becomes a well-known, that's the best way I could describe it, a well-known issue, and it grows inside of our district, it says by statute, we have to approve it. So I would still like the committee to do it, but before it is put in, if it becomes a well-known issue, that it comes to here.
Yeah.
That'd be the 2 things I'd like to see.
Okay, perfect. Yep, I can make those.
The committee doesn't approve anything.
Right.
Are you talking about under the new statute?
Well, under here, the committee that is put together.
Or the policy as it exists?
So for objections.
Yeah. So what happens is if someone comes in and objects. Yeah.
So the district learning and instruction team, if there is a complaint, they would make the decision on it, and then the board would be the appeal to that.
Yeah.
I remember watching recently a patron reading out of the book, and the board said, hey, that's pornographic, you can't do that here. And they go, well, this is in the 13-year-old's reading.
Yeah.
So before it gets to that point,
Yeah.
I think he should be empowered to say, okay, let's wait, we'll remove the material, go through the 5-day, because it's only a 5-day process. Well, that it has to be addressed. But if it becomes a well-known issue, the way it is set up now, the appeal is made to that committee, which is the parents, teachers, administrators, that it would come here if it becomes a well-known issue for approval.
Yeah, no, and we've had that. I had that. In fact, I was telling Scott, as we were going through this with Julie, who helps our librarians, supports our librarians, we were having that conversation, and I would bet probably more often than not in the past, I would bet we probably weren't following that as far as if there was a concern. Typically, I know Julie was saying, all right, like we had a situation with our digital content, and what she did when we started seeing that concern from parents is she pulled that off so that we could look at it to see what the issues were, and then so I would probably say our practice probably was not necessarily following what the policy said.
Right,
we're leaving it there.
It says you can't take it down.
At least I'm trying to think of other times that it would have.
The challenge
So I don't
material
disagree.
will not be removed
Yep.
during the review and appeal process.
And that's what our current policy says too.
So I think
And the theory of that, I assume, is because the board's already approved it, right? And then you're just saying that the
If-
board might have not have been aware of.
Yeah, the board
even though they
approves the
approved it.
committee to review all of it, and we trust that it's been done, but how do you catch everything, and especially on digital? So if it pops up and somebody finds something that's very objective in any of the criterias, then I think it should be up to the superintendent to immediately make that call and let the process go. But if it becomes a well-known issue, then I think the committee does it, and before that finding is finalized, it goes to the school board.
Yeah.
That'd be my two recommendations.
Can that be, I don't know if that can be included in the motion.
So
This,
I think what we'd have
this is
is,
required by legislation, isn't it? The makeup of this committee?
so that, yeah, that's not in this current policy,
that's
so
not
we're
in
gonna
this
have to bring it back to the board for that.
So we could adopt it as is, knowing
And,
that's.
and then we could look at the other changes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, there are two ways. So one, in my mind, Mr. Smith could make a motion to amend the policy, and then that would go to the board to consider, and then we could pass the policy as amended tonight. Or two, knowing that this policy is coming right back to the board, likely next month, and we could just take that under consideration and bring that, include that in the policy that's coming back next month. I don't know which one I want you to do.
I think, let's just make.
Not a lot's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's
Well,
exactly
there is one that's happening right as of today.
Well, and I'm okay if you in your approval say that with these changes you would approve. I'd be okay with that. I could get that done tomorrow.
We can amend a policy and approve it as final all in the same night? Or do we have to put it back out for 30-day review and all that kind of stuff?
There's really nothing in policy that governs that, so I think it's within the board's discretion.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit lost on this.
I would just say it's up to, at this point, it's up to Mr. Smith whether he wants to make a motion to amend the policy or whether he wants to provide that as a suggestion to the administration for us to look at as we bring the policy back. So.
What do you think, Randy?
I think I'm good if that's what you want, and it's coming back in a month, that we've addressed those issues then, but it just seems it's so much faster than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it can spread so
It
quickly.
can, yeah. And there are other amendments that came from this situation today that we also know we have to include in the policy, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we always think that, as we're going through a policy, oh man, it looks good, and until it doesn't.
I wouldn't, I mean, the third option would be not to approve the policy tonight, but based on the fact that we do have a concern that was at least expressed today, I'd appreciate if the board did approve it so we can go ahead and implement this. We'll have a good test drive on it.
Okay, well,
I
now
move we approve the policy?
I'll consider a motion for that, Greg.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Greg, second by Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Jason,
We didn't get our standing ovation, we're still waiting for the last.
wait a minute. Did you talk about
There was two policies. The other one, there was.
Educational Media Center?
It just adds that it'll go back to policy 2540 if there's an issue with something in the media center.
So do we need a motion for this?
Yes.
Okay, I'll consider a motion.
Yeah, it's a much
I would
smaller.
so move.
Paul Jenkins, moved, second by Greg Calder. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was great.
All right,
With
graduation.
enthusiasm.
Graduation speaking assignments, I guess for Carissa and Randy,
They take two each.
it's been a tradition.
Just pick one, they give it to them all.
I've always wanted to.
Or we could let them take three each.
Yeah.
I like that one better.
Yeah.
Been a tradition that a member of the board
Didn't we
speak at the
just-
graduations.
Didn't we just pass a bullying?
I was gonna say this might be the bullying policy.
Which school do you go to?
They're deliberately including you, not excluding.
So I was thinking that we had a rotating program, but not necessarily.
Yeah, it really
I think
hasn't.
it's been a little more
So,
Haphazard.
I guess what I would suggest is maybe Thunder Ridge. Would anyone like to take Thunder Ridge?
I don't care.
Do any board members have any preferences for any of the schools this year?
I don't. Not this year.
Why don't I make
I
it
have a
simple?
preference next year for
Okay,
Bonneville.
but nobody has a preference this year at all? Okay, so why don't we make the assignments, and then Chad, if you'll just give us direction on who gets the extra assignment, because we've gone from 5 graduations to 6 this year.
Right.
So we can work with you on that,
Okay.
but if you're okay, I mean, unless a board member has a preference, we can just wrap up the meeting and assign it.
The June 2nd on a Thursday, I would not be able to
Okay,
do, I could do Bonneville, I could not do Lincoln.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
but Thursday
Just say if anybody has any conflicts, let Chad know, and
Yeah.
you and Chad work it out and tell us what we're doing.
yeah, even if, I'd just say let Sam know if you're okay,
Sam.
and
Okay.
we'll let Sam make the assignment.
Also, it'd be nice to expedite because we're getting their program together.
Yeah, so if you're okay, I'll work with Sam and we'll have that out and we'll notify the board. So are there any other conflicts from any board members for any of those nights or times?
Are we talking 3 minutes or 20?
3, 2.5 to 3.
For you, 30,
Perfect,
Randy.
perfect.
For you, 30.
3 is good, I can talk to you.
So Chad, you said you couldn't do the second,
I couldn't do,
We'll keep him off a Thursday.
right? Okay.
yeah, I can't do on Thursday.
Okay.
And I did Hillcrest last year, so I don't want to do Hillcrest again.
Okay.
I got complaints.
Is that how you get out of it? No.
If you stay under 3 minutes, nobody's gonna complain.
That's right.
If you say something wrong, they will.
Yeah.
Okay, call for agenda items for upcoming meetings.
I would like to propose maybe some kind of a summer reading program and discuss that maybe. Volunteers, we get all volunteers doing sports, let's get some volunteers teaching reading. I'll be on first on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, great suggestion. If you'll make a note of that, Sam, and I guess discuss that with
Like board
Scott.
members doing?
No, I don't,
It's
I
probably
think,
broader,
Like
right?
every elementary school, 1 day a week, open up for 2 hours and go and read with the kids who want to come and learn. Have reading camp or something.
Probably just largely under the concept of how to encourage early reading, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But one way.
For 1 quarter of 11, I talked more about what we've done with that, but
Yeah.
that, part of the genesis of that was, the whole idea was kids who can't get to their schools, and so, without transportation, so, anyway. We'll talk more on that at our work session.
okay, anything else on that? All right, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Upcoming agenda items, do you wanna,
Well,
just that's the only one?
that's the,
So just so the board is aware, Nick Miller or somebody from his firm and Eric Herringer will be at our work session.
oh,
And
okay.
I said that intent of the administration is to discuss an upcoming bond